Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Washington Post political correspondent Dave Weigel. Why the Dems are fighting for labor in Alabama. Also on the program today, Seneca Savoy of the Austin DSA and Homes Not Handcuffs. Meanwhile, a Democratic senator accuses the FBI of doing a fake 2018 background check of Brett Kavanaugh. We'll ask the moms. Meanwhile, a record number of unaccompanied immigrant children detained as the Biden administration scrambles for a solution. More EU countries suspending use of the AstraZeneca vaccination. Meanwhile, the deadlier nature of B117 variant has now been confirmed. As investigations continue, half of New Yorkers poll against Andrew Cuomo resigning. That poll will change. 12 Republican states have now adamantly refused to expand Medicaid, denying millions of their people health care, despite it including a massive financial windfall. They make money off it. New poll, vast majority of Americans support a $15 minimum wage. The owners of Purdue Pharma upped their settlement payment to nearly $4.3 billion. But don't worry, the family will retain billions. Calls begin for Justice Breyer to retire, and Spain to experiment with a 4-day work week. Yes, please. Lastly, U.S. Jesuits raise $100 million for reparations to descendants of slaves. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Also joining me today, as always, Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma. How are you?
Hello, Sam. I'm doing well today. How about you?
I'm doing okay, too. You said that as if you don't say that every day. You seem to be doing well every day.
Well, I mean, I feel like I said I was doing well yesterday. I had a bit of trouble with daylight savings time, I've got to say. Yesterday, I felt like I was kind of in a dreamlike state.
Yeah, I think it's taken 2 days to catch up with me because I'm feeling a little bit of that today. But hope springs eternal. I mean, we'll recover. I like it better. I feel like they should make it permanent. Every time daylight savings comes around, there's always seems to be at least a couple of lawmakers who are like, we should do this permanently. And I'm all for it. I think we're past.
You like it light later as opposed to light earlier? I mean, the light helps me get up in the morning, so that's what's difficult.
Yes, I do. Because I do like it later in the day. Yes, without a doubt. Because it keeps my kid sleeping too. And so he doesn't wake up the moment there's like even a pinprick of light coming into the room. But so yes, I'm all in favor of keeping it like this. But we'll see. I think we'll probably go through another year where people will say it's a good idea, and then we won't hear anything else about it. But
we need a time lobby. to buy off our politicians.
Matt, you're in on the keep the daylight savings, aren't you?
I mean, I like it in the fall, but I hate it in the spring, so I'm kind of tied between both poles.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of my take too.
I feel like wasn't it? It's theoretically to give farmers more time, right?
But I think that's a wives' tale. I don't think that's actually true.
It's not. It's not actually true.
I don't think
what's
so.
the conspiracy that creates it? I mean,
big clock. I think
big. It's Big Ben who is influencing. Well, that's over in the UK. So
If nobody can figure out why we're doing it, I would say let's just leave it as is and not fall back. I'd like that extra hour, but I'll give it up.
We should just keep falling back. Let's just fall back every time.
2 hour. We could start the week and then just add an hour every day, so that we get an extra hour of sleep every day.
I think that math works.
Let's check this out. One of the few great things that came out of the Trump era was that Larry Kudlow got his TV show back, I think. And right? Didn't he get his TV show back?
Well, he got a new TV show. Wasn't he on CNBC before? And now he's the replacement for the very unhinged Lou Dobbs, who got kicked off because he was spreading theories.
So he get the same TV show back, but he got a TV show back.
He got his hour, I think, or he got his slot.
Fox Business. So he gets to show up on all these TV shows. And Kudlow, and I did his show a couple of times when he was on CNBC back in the day. His answer for everything was to cut taxes, cut taxes, cut taxes, cut taxes. Well, he's back on it. It didn't seem to necessarily do very well for us with the.
He didn't learn any new tricks in the Trump
didn't learn any new
administration?
tricks.
No.
Here he is
sad.
with Laura Ingraham, and this is in response to the reports that we talked about yesterday briefly, that the Democrats are going to be looking to increase taxes on wealthy people and corporations to levels in a way that we haven't seen since 1993. That Janet Yellen was floating the idea of an international accord to get a baseline for corporate taxes so that all countries could raise their corporate taxes without getting engaged in a race to the bottom in terms of trying to attract industry. So here's Larry Kudlow on with Laura Ingraham, spreading the fable that the way you raise tax revenue is by cutting taxes on corporation and wealthy people.
Damaged wealthy people also. This business about paying their fair share, the way you get upper income people to pay more in taxes is lower their tax rate. Not only will they have investment incentives, they will also have no tax avoidance. So they never tell you that. But the evidence is very clear. And to say this is just big corporations as though they were bad, or they're going to take away the deduction for small businesses too, they're not bad. That's just a straw horse. It's a red herring. It's a Trojan horse. This is democratic social policy, redistribution, and all it will do, Laura, all it will do is take a good recovery in 2021 and stop it dead in its tracks in 22 and 23 and beyond if it gets through the Congress.
It's a slippery dilemma. It's a false slope. I'm just going to mix them all up in a jar and see what comes out.
I mean, aside from his inability to deploy some basic idioms, the idea that if we lower taxes on wealthy people, they will not engage in tax avoidance and they will pay more taxes is absurd on its face, because they don't care what the tax rate is. They just don't want to pay a certain amount of money. They're not going to pay more money because they don't have to pay as much in taxes. It doesn't make sense.
Is he saying that they're going to donate their money to the government? I mean, that's the only way it could generate more revenue. But he's just retreading and desperately clawing at 40 years of failed trickle-down economic tropes that is just, regurgitating in his brain.
Indeed. And as far as the idea of lowering taxes and driving revenue, you really only need to say one word to dispel that myth, and that is Kansas. People can go back and look at Sam Brownback's Kansas, where he brought in the original godfather of this concept, that if you lower taxes, you will get more tax revenue, Arthur Laffer, who developed the laughable Laffer curve. And they brought him in, they cut taxes on individuals, they cut taxes on corporations in Kansas. And lo and behold, what happened once they cut these taxes? They actually got less tax revenue, so much less tax revenue that they had to cleave huge parts of the Kansas education, public education, Kansas higher education. And so much so that a Republican legislature ended up raising taxes, and Sam Brownback, they basically jettisoned him into the ether by appointing him during the Trump administration as a way of basically burying this narrative. They appointed him to be ambassador to faith. That's not a joke.
I know.
He's
I know.
literally appointed to ambassador to faith and then never heard of again. Like they kept him floating somewhere in the atmosphere, I guess, because they didn't want this story of Kansas to get out. And I have to say, it's a failure of the Democrats to have not
it's good
it more.
PR by the Republicans, if nothing else, right? I mean, and again, just the Kudlow way of thinking. They tried this in the Trump administration. They said the tax cuts would pay for themselves, knowing that they wouldn't. Less taxes on the wealthy means less tax revenue. You don't need to be an economics major to understand that. But it's pathological at this point. Kudlow's got no other mode because, it's like a greed-soaked mind. Yes, he has one tune. He sings it over and over again. And I got to say, it's done him well. He's been fairly successful with it. The best people get
it's kept him soaked in many ways.
Yeah, right.
Indeed.
Well, soaked in different ways, yes.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Washington Post political correspondent Dave Weigel. Back in a moment. Meanwhile, here is Emma's favorite advertisement that she likes me to read here. This is
Hello, Tushy.
Exactly. 2021 new rear, as it were.
No, it's new year, new rear, Sam.
Well, that's the way it should be. New rear, new year, or new year, new rear. Look, in 2021, don't just make a commitment to wash your hands every time you poop. Go the extra mile, wash your butt. That's right. It's the brand new Hello Tushy 3.0 modern bidet attachment. It's finally here. It is stylish. It is eco-friendly. It is super easy to install and affordable. Hello Tushy doesn't just cleanse your butt with a precise stream of fresh water. It cleans itself. Cleans itself before and after it's used with the Smart Spray automatic self-cleaning nozzle. It attaches to your existing toilet. It is super easy to install. It requires no electricity. It requires no additional plumbing. It cuts toilet paper use by 80%. Sanitation is simple. The Schmutz Shield offers easy cleaning, and the knobs are naturally antimicrobial. Plus, every Hello Tushy bidet attachment comes with a 60-day risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. You can upgrade to the new 3.0 model if you're already hooked on Hello Tushy, or if you're new to the revolution, join millions of happy customers right now. Have a clean butt with every flush. I've told this story a million times now. During the height of the toilet paper scare, our buddy Kyle told me that he went all in on a serious bidet, and he said it changed his life. And I was like, I'm not ready to make that kind of commitment. And sometime around then, Hello Tushy asked if we could advertise, and I was like, I'll try it out. And there you go. It has fundamentally changed something that we all do. Let's put it that way. And somebody who had the idea, who had made the point last time we read this, I can't remember if it was an IM or what. Like, you don't you don't just take a dry piece of paper and wipe your hands if you get something on it.
I believe we had a call or an
Yeah.
IM.
All right, that's what it was.
Yes,
That was
yes.
a perfect example. You use water. So go to hellotushy.com/majority, get 10% off plus free shipping. This is a special offer for our listeners. Go to hellotushy, TUSHY.com/majority for 10% off. hellotushy.com/majority. Remember, 60-day risk-free guarantee. You're going to want to try this out, folks. Lastly, if you're a business owner who's hiring, as you know, a lot of challenges just in general hiring new folks, certainly during this era. It's hard to organize when you get all these applications. It's hard to find the right people. And now, you don't get a chance to meet them in person. You do it over Zoom. But it definitely helps to make sure you got the persons with the right skills. And that's why hiring can feel like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can post your job to some job board, but then all you got to do is hope that the right person finds it. Well, this is why you should try ZipRecruiter, and you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. When you post a job on ZipRecruiter, it gets sent out to over 100 top job sites with one click. And then ZipRecruiter's matching technology finds people with the right skills and experience for your job and actively invites them to apply. How do I know this? That's how we got Brendan. Brendan was invited by ZipRecruiter, found it. We had a bunch of qualified candidates. It was just the top one. In fact, ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. True. It's no wonder over 2.3 million business owners have come to ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. So while other companies overwhelm you with way too many options, ZipRecruiter finds what you're looking for, the needle in the haystack. And right now you can try ZipRecruiter for free at this web address, ZipRecruiter.com/majority. Once again, remember, go to this unique URL, ZipRecruiter.com/majority, MAJORITY, ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. When you become a member on the Majority Report, you support the free show. You get the free show commercial free, and you get the fun half. Now, I would like to welcome to the program, welcome back to the program, Dave Weigel, Washington correspondent for the political correspondent for the Washington Post. Dave, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So I see you're outside. That's good.
I am. I'm in Los Angeles, which is not DC, which is awesome. I would recommend it to anybody who lives in DC to get here for a while. Yeah,
I can imagine. Yes, it would be nice. I'm waiting for the sun to come here. All right. Well, so Dave, you're out there. Obviously, you're writing the trailer. There is no campaigns right now.
Yeah.
Or at least no political campaigns, more or less. And you're covering some of the stuff that some of the pieces you've written have to do with what the stimulus means for the next campaign. I want to talk about that in a moment. But you focused in on the Democrats sort of like actively engaging, or at least more so than we've seen in the past. And that's sort of the point. With this union drive in Alabama, where you have workers in Bessemer, Alabama, trying to unionize their Amazon warehouse. So what's the story? Why are they engaged in this? And at some level, there was a story in the Times today. I don't know if you saw it yet. I know it's early out there. That the way that the lessons that were learned from the stimulus in 2009 have been deployed today by Democrats. And there was a little bit, I guess, the Obama people were a little bit upset that they were in some way sort of criticized for the way they responded. But talk about this in the context of the union.
Yeah, it's not brand new for Democrats to be this invested in labor drive, but it's newer than people think it is. So when Joe Biden taking the lead of Bernie Sanders and this groups that have been organizing around this union drive. Joe Biden listened to them, recorded this video saying, without saying the word Amazon, it's up to you whether to form a union or not. Don't be intimidated. That was kind of a high sign for a lot of Democrats to invest more in this. So you've got Alabama Democrats putting time and resources into advertising the drive. You had a delegation of House Democrats go down. You just basically have this confidence. It was all some of this was happening at the same time the PRO Act passed the House. This confidence with Democrats in just being actively organizing pro-labor party in a way that they kind of got away from in the 90s, right? I mean, so much of Democratic trauma is based on losing 1980 and undoing everything the party stood for over a couple decades. And so much what we see in the last couple months, to a surprising extent, if you didn't vote for Biden, if you thought that Sanders or Warren was the only candidate who would do this, to a surprising extent, Joe Biden, age 78, rethinking all these concessions Democrats made to get away from welfare payments, to get away from unions. Like, this was just the biggest example. Talking to people in Alabama, like, no one could remember a president being this adamant in favor of a particular union drive. I think they had to go back to the 40s really to find one.
Yeah, I spoke to one of the organizers of that of the union there, and he cited Biden support as being very helpful as to what they're doing. Well, let's walk through. I mean, because let's just start with the Sanders campaign, because the Sanders campaign, I don't know if people remember this, was not just campaigning. I mean, they were actively engaging in union drives around the country over the course of the campaign. I mean, they had sort of integrated it, and sometimes they were deploying their email lists, right? Just remind people of that.
Well, that's really important. So Faz Shakir, who was the campaign manager of the Sanders campaign in 2020, he joined then. He would talk to me about this, that every time you send a campaign email out that's not raising money for you, you're using that list to you're burning out maybe somebody who gets it to give attention to something else. And they use the list multiple times, I think dozens of times, to promote some sort of union drive or a strike. It was pretty frequently there was a strike happening. We support the striking workers. And look, that the effect of that in the primary was to kind of goad people like Biden into doing more. I mean, sometimes Biden would hog the credit, right? There was this shop and save strike in Massachusetts. Warren and Sanders were pretty out early in favor of it, and then Biden showed up, and then on the trail, Biden would start talking about how I showed up at this picket line. But the lesson was taught and learned, that this was what Democrats wanted to hear from the people ready to lead them. And I mentioned Faz because this group, More Perfect Union, was founded like not a lot of fanfare after the 2020 election, and that's one of the organizations that just with not a ton of resources went in and one, use his connection to Ron Klain to say you should pay attention to this Amazon drive. He already was paying attention, but kind of talking through what impact Biden would have. And two, just talking to workers, putting out videos, creating content that, because the problem for a lot of union drives, speaking generally, is it's not just that people might want to form one. It's that they are told from their employers, even if they're not getting fired, it's going to be a lot of money being, you're going to take out of your own paycheck to give to this group. It's a lot of effort. It might fail. Why even bother? So trying to create a sense of solidarity momentum has been a goal of Sanders campaign veterans. And that's kind of through osmosis gotten to Biden and to the rest of the Democrats.
Well, when you contrast it too with how, and hi, Dave, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
When you contrast it to obviously the Obama administration, the last Democratic administration, you cite the efforts or really lack thereof, I would say, during Obama's tenure, even when he had a supermajority, the Free Choice Act, right, or the Employee Free Choice Act. The Democrats didn't even fight for that in the slightest. Can you contrast that with what we're seeing right now from Biden's leadership? And even though Obama had, I'm going to put my walking shoes on rhetoric during his campaign, similar to how Biden talked big about union support during the campaign.
I mean, that was the surprise. Like, so you just mentioned it. Obama had this line. I remember The one when I went back and looked for the exact quote, the one I saw was in South Carolina, which he won huge, and said, if you guys are on the picket line, I'm going to get some walking shoes and walk there with you. And people said,
Soft
okay,
walking shoes. Soft walking
shoes. We're gonna take it literally, and he never did. So the same promise from Biden did rang pretty hollow until, he has not walked a picket line, but this is exactly the sort of thing that Labor wanted Obama to do. And Emma, you talked to Democrats in these primaries post-Obama, 2016 and 2020, that was a real problem for Labor. One, they had members who drifted away from the Democratic Party because they said, okay, what do these guys actually do for us? It was different in states where the Republican Party was all in a right to work. But generally, the guy made promises. Where are they? Unionization is still declining. And also just I think the political mood still, even though Obama was a fairly young president, came out of 80s and 90s politics and not the 70s, there still was this shell shock of you're going to alienate people you need if you're just all in for labor. The Chamber of Commerce is going to come and smash you. So what happened instead was the Chamber of Commerce just kind of rolled them. EFCA it never had 60 votes as is, but one mistake Democrats made in 2009 and 10, people have been writing about how they have looked back and regret it. The big one probably is they just didn't utilize reconciliation the way they could have. They could have passed another reconciliation bill after Obamacare. Could they have put EFCA in it? No, they could have put some other forms. But you're right. They had this bill. Most Democrats were for it. It had passed the House when Bush was president. And when they needed just to convince Arlen Specter, in this couple month window where they had 60 votes, that was not a priority. They did not schedule a vote. They did not push it. I don't think that would happen today. I think if there was a window where it was clear Democrats had the votes and it wasn't clear how long they'd had, look at it now. Look at the pressure you have on name a Seventh Circuit judicial nominee. Right. That was not a thing that people organized around. No offense to the people who did shout about it. There were a couple, but it was not, if you went just consumed your normal amount of news or you watched MSNBC, you just kind of said, let's give the ball to Obama. I'm sure he's doing the right thing. You didn't say, look, you told people that you were going to pass this bill. Where is it? So you're right. The Biden administration put out a statement saying they support the PRO Act, which is a bit more than was done with EFCA. And then you have in the Senate, it's not clear what the steps will be, because you can dodge a lot of this by saying, well, we don't want to break the filibuster. But the fact that they're trying is very new.
And I want to just remind people that not only did Obama say that, but in 2011, when Scott Walker assaulted unions in Wisconsin, this was a ready-made opportunity for Barack Obama, and he said nothing. It was as if it didn't exist, and it was a massive story. And this theme, though, of and there's two halves of it, right? There's the Biden half of it, and then there's this sort of like the era and all that means in terms of not giving Biden the benefit of the doubt, or not giving him an extended honeymoon, however you want to phrase that. The fact that you do have people who are going like, hey, Breyer's got to resign, but you got to pick judges for the Seventh Circuit. We are monitoring who Merrick Garland is picking to fill out the antitrust division. There's just so much more scrutiny, informed scrutiny, and what I mean, there these factors. I guess we could spend hours trying to figure out like what developed. But part of it is, I think it seems there is so much leveraging the mistakes of 2009 from all sides. It feels like all players within that world, whether it's from the outside or the inside, they all are using it to leverage what they should do this time around.
Absolutely. I think Benji Sarlin from NBC likes to compare this to the movie. I forgot the title. They retitled it "Live, Die, Repeat." Edge of Tomorrow, I think it's called, where basically, Tom Cruise keeps reliving the same battles, and then because he's relived it, knows what to do the next time. This is only their second time getting to try it, but Ron Klain was there in the White House during the stimulus as a Biden advisor. He's now the chief of staff. It's rarely do you get. I can't even think of another time when you've had people who were watching from, the second row and thinking about how the first row was getting it all wrong, got to be in the first row and make all the decisions. So that's been a gigantic factor this whole time. And the whole aspect of Obama and his legacy here is interesting because Biden was a defender of Obama's legacy during the campaign, almost protesting too much about it, right? Any kind of criticism would be made of something that was left unfinished by Obama. Or most frequently you'd hear this with the deportations, and he would just rise up to defend Obama and criticize people for talking trash on Obama. This was, I think, very effective in keeping black voters who ended up deciding the nomination behind him. So Biden's like the only guy who can do this. And there's a good New York Times story today by Stead Herndon about some of the Democratic thinking about this. I wasn't going to say debates, because most Democrats are fine with saying, yes, there's more we can do than we did in 2009. You've got a couple people like your Valerie Jarrett's and Rahm Emanuel's who resent this, but they don't run the party anymore. I mean, Rahm Emanuel's out of the cabinet. He's commenting on ABC News. There's this slow realization that the people that the left blamed for stemming the Obama administration when it could have done more, not like asking for something impossible, but doing a thing that could have passed or could have gotten budget reconciliation. They just don't have the ear of this White House. So I feel like no one wants to be naive and say they fixed it, because that leads to disaster. But this level of pressure moving a White House is kind of new. I mean, go back to how Bill Clinton operated in the first few months, or how Jimmy Carter did. And the story of like Democrats taking power like Biden did is they have some ideas, they immediately scale them back, and they get rolled. Now, so the minimum wage has been scaled back. Obviously, that's one thing he wanted to do immediately. He hasn't done. The immigration bill does not. The comprehensive bill is not moving as fast as they promised. But look, Obama did not. This is one of the things you heard again and again from Latino organizers, that Obama said he'd have an immigration bill in his first 100 days. He totally could have. Something could have passed in 2009. He didn't even introduce it, whereas Biden has introduced it. So that's like a common theme of this presidency is we're going to try the stuff that the quote unquote professional left was telling us to do. And when they've bailed on it, it's been, well, we don't have enough votes to break the filibuster on this one. I mean, minimum wage is kind of the example where if you thought we had 50 votes, if we broke the filibuster, we actually don't right now. Is that convenient for them to dodge that fight? I mean, definitely. But I think it stands out that the other things they said they were going to do and try, they actually did them, which is new. Every other Democratic president gets in and immediately scales it back. I mean, Bill Clinton couldn't get a $16 billion stimulus bill passed with 56, I think it was either 55 or 56 Senate Democrats, and they just whiffed it. And Biden has not.
I think, and I think they're gonna. I mean, I think that we're gonna. The conversation is not over about the filibuster by a long shot at this point too. And I want to talk about the way that they are using the stimulus, because I think that is also another example of this, where they're actually going out and politicking on something that they did that is good. But before we get there, I'm very curious about this. So Faz, you write that Faz approached Klain.
Yes.
And there was you say Applebaum, congressman from Alabama, also flagged the drive for the White House. Like, what do you have a sense of, like, how does that work? I mean, like, is this the thing that, like, the Biden administration is like only vaguely aware of this and they don't understand the import, or is it they don't want to engage in it and then they have to be convinced to engage in it? Like, what is that dynamic?
Well, I mean, so a good way to think about this is the Trump administration versus the Bush administration, right? So George Bush gets in there. He has a collection of conservative appointees. A lot of them are Texans who he knows. But if you're just like a David Bossie, or you're a conservative activist, you don't have a direct line. I mean, you can get something in front of them, but not until Trump do you realize, oh man, all I need to do is go on Fox News and say, let's pardon this guy who shot up a village in Iraq, and the president is watching and he'll listen. You had a direct line. People had lines to your Krugel Landowskis and the people in the orbit who were not the kind of people who took power when Republicans won before, and they were this time. And so without a lot of activism, I mean, like there weren't marches in favor of building the wall. It was just that people they could kind of push an open door they had finally a Republican listening to them. I think a version way less giving than what I just described is happening with the Biden folks. It's just that the people who know the Biden team are able to get them ideas in front of them where they weren't. Compare getting something in front of Ron Klain to getting something in front of Rahm Emanuel. I mean, famously, he just was really arrogant, really dismissive of the left, thought most of what the left was asking for was a waste of time, even judicial nominations. He was annoyed that people would keep bringing that up to him. And that's not how these people operate. I'm not trying to venerate anyone. I'm just saying it's different now that there are people in this administration who have relationships on the left. Even the comms team, includes people from Move On. It's just a more connected to, I'd say, the left generally. And then some of that's kind of the more soccer mom liberal left. Much less of it is the Sanders left. But it's true that Biden gets along really well with Sanders, and he has people in his team who get along with Sanders' team, and that was not the case under Barack Obama. So a lot of this is personal relationships, and some of it is the constant activism. I mean, having a big primary where Biden didn't bend on a lot of stuff, but having this in his face again and again, I think really did have an impact on them saying, okay, here's what you have to do in order to keep people in the tent. I don't know, man. I haven't got the sense that people are having street parties over everything Biden does. But I was in Louisiana last week for a story. There is a special election coming up for Cedric Richmond's seat on Saturday, and the early voting was last week. And it was just weird. I had been so long since I talked to a bunch of Democratic voters, because it's without getting too much into it. There's a guy in the race who's endorsed by Richmond, is running on his connections to the White House, and there's people in the race who are running as outsiders. And the voters I talked to were like, yeah, Biden's doing pretty great. Like, I'm really happy with the way the country's going. I really think this administration is doing good things. We send somebody there who works with them. Awesome. They're just, there wasn't the same frustration that I saw like immediately under Barack Obama that wasn't really ever getting to the Obama White House.
Well, I mean, so Gary Chambers is running in that race, right?
Yes. He's one of the people. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'd just be curious about your thoughts on that, but I know we don't really have the full amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious too about how the kind of Democratic, not resurgence, but renewed focus on the South is playing into this. I mean, you said you were down in Louisiana. We saw the wins in Georgia. We saw the Democrats delivered when they promised material things to voters, and it worked out. And I mean, the checks are $1,400, but I digress. I mean, and then of course, what we've been seeing, I guess in Alabama as well too, right? Which is the deepest red state you can think of. But there seems to be an understanding by Democrats that we can't just really ignore these states going forward. And a lot of that is connected, I think, to Black voters as well. Can you touch on how that's informed this pro-union stance from the Biden administration?
Yeah, well, and one thing we haven't mentioned yet is the American Recovery Plan Act. I mean, I still wish I had a better acronym, but it includes this. I'll just use neutrally the word bailout. It includes like just all this free money for union pension plans. That was the kind of thing that unions just never got to the table on. Certainly not under Trump. He did one bill for coal miners, right? And he took all the credit because that's what he did. But yeah, they've oriented themselves much towards these like movements in the party, and the fact that states like Arizona and Georgia came on the board. A lot of that had to do with the deep organizing. These are not heavily organized states, but you have in those states building trades and retail workers and health workers, and they were super organized, and they got taken seriously. I mean, the story that the Stacey Abrams, I guess, is the avatar of all this because it's the easiest story to tell and it's the most impressive turnaround. But it was about finding all these people and convincing them, no, actually, they'll be like a deliverable if you elect us and you send us into power. So that is new, and I don't know how to scan across like the whole Midwest, because there's a lot of stuff they did or they ran on that they think will benefit the working class white guy who just bailed on the party for other reasons. I mean, that the Republicans, it's very telling that the two issues that kind of honed in on are the Keystone Pipeline and immigration. Both of those are kind of not the reasons, if you live in Ohio, that like your plant moved. I mean, if you work in an auto plant, you don't care about the Keystone Pipeline. If they move the plant to Canada, it's not because immigrants are here. But so it's clear that Democrats have just more of a story to tell based on, and again, I sound like I don't want to simp for them, but it's just
Right.
very different from the old attitude they had, which is that we're going to run on stuff and we're going to ignore the organizers and activists because they're always whining and they don't know better. Like getting rinsed in the Midwest once and losing voters they never thought they were going to lose made them more attentive to labor. I mean, that's one thing I remember in the campaign is there would be these labor forums and people really had to show their work. They had to prove that they were actually going to support labor because these guys had watched their members drift toward Trump and they couldn't name anything Democrats had done for them recently. Like the fact that there's no discussion of a new trade deal right now for a Democratic president, that's fairly new. Again, that's Clinton, Obama were big into using trade as like a foreign policy, wide-ranging, just a thing that was less about labor than about like global economics. That's gone. So I don't know if it could come back. It's just surprising to watch them govern this way.
There just seems to be a lack of outright hostility towards major segments of the party. I mean, this is on some level, what we're sort of like applauding is like basic coalition politics, without but so let me ask you this. If the likes of Rahm Emanuel are not, and it's not just Rahm Emanuel, right? I mean, there are a legion of mini Rahm Emanuels who work in that sort of universe. Like, who characterized to me, like, who are staffing these things? Like when you show up, I mean, there's thousands of people who work in the administration, right? We end up hearing about the cabinet secretaries and then maybe a layer or two underneath that. And to a certain extent, it feels like it's sort of split between sort of, mainline Democrats, if you will, or establishment Democrats, not necessarily ones that are hostile necessarily to the left, but some who are certainly sort of are dipped in that they come from different waters. But then there seems to be others. How would you characterize those people? Like whose universe are they from?
Wait, I kind of know what you're talking about, but which? Well, you say like
the Rahm Emanuels don't have claims here, but so whose universe do the people who do?
It's good. They're just, some of it's just that they're younger. So I mean, there's people in this team like Emmy Ruiz is running politics at the White House, and she was a Hillary campaign veteran, and so on paper, people might look at her and say, "Oh, well, Hillary campaign. I know what that's about. That's about never only doing incremental things and not wanting to do politics." But it's kind of this cohort of Democrats who came up in the Obama era and watched them lose everything and get so disappointed, are just more aggressive about spending money, making people know that what they benefited from, and then advertising it. So there weren't that many ROMs. I mean, he's but the thing that I have not unraveled is that Bruce Reed, who was there in the 90s under Bill Clinton, who was there for Obama, one of the original neoliberals, is still in the Biden administration, and people were kind of waiting for what's the sellout he's going to pull that's going to pivot back to austerity. There just hasn't been one right now. Even what they're talking about this summer, if they do an infrastructure plan, they're talking about raising taxes as part of it, knowing that they're going to raise taxes on the wealthy and that Republicans will be against it, not the Clinton style. And Bruce Reed was there for this. The deficit's a problem, so we're just going to, everyone has to suffer. We're going to cut benefits and we're going to raise taxes. Just no one talks like that anymore. And I'd look, I mean, if there were Democrats who still believe this, I would talk to them. But even Manchin isn't on that path. I mean, if Manchin was a 90s style austerity Democrat, he just would have bailed on this bill, right? He wouldn't have voted for it. So I think it's just a collective traumatization of this entire class of Democrats. And some of them were more moderate and worked for Clinton or, worked for John Hickenlooper. I mean, John Hickenlooper's campaign spokesman works for AOC now, and her beliefs has not changed. The strategy is different. So I think it's just been kind of a move left in the party. And that's one of the things when Republicans will say, this party move left, I'll say, well, that's inarguable. It totally has. Republicans have moved right, Democrats have moved left. The Republican critique is just weird because instead of attacking the things that all the left energy is based on, they're attacking left-wing stuff that's like not happening, you know? So they're going to abolish the suburbs. They're going to get rid of Dr. Seuss. They're not really attacking the main change here, which is that liberals rediscovered like LBJ style, not the bad LBJ, but the original popular LBJ style of like Keynesianism and uplifting people by giving them money. And like they're all on the board now. It's weird.
Isn't that a confirmation of what the left has been saying all this whole time? Is like they can't, if you actually implement the policies that 5 or 10 years ago they said that you were implementing, they can't really attack those because people like it. I mean,
yeah.
You know, we've watched, you know, I don't know, a million Fox news segments where they're like, well, of course. I mean, if you give people money, they're going to be happy. And it's like, well, okay, maybe we should be giving people money and make people happy. Like, I mean, it doesn't have the staying power. I mean, that's why, you know, that's why McCarthy's at the border right now saying this is a crisis. And everybody's going like, well, not the kind of crisis you think it is.
Yeah, but that's kind of a good Republican tactic generally that's worked before is this president took over and something else is happening that he ruined, you know. And it's tough because so many people's attention is fixated on the pandemic, not on the border. It really isn't. I mean, the reason they're going to the border, it's kind of like the Onion headline, Marilyn Manson going door to door to shock people. Like, they're really angry that the media is not rushing to the border. And people are covering it, like press is covering it, but they're trying to make that the thing Americans care about and talk about. And it's proven to be kind of tough without Trump as president driving all the attention that way. But you're right. I mean, both sides have done this, though. I mean, if you talk to Republicans, I did this around CPAC. I was talking, like Matt Schlapp, who runs ACU at CPAC, has been around forever. And I was asking him, like, what's some stuff that you thought was I didn't say too far right, but what's some stuff that Trump ran on you thought was too unpopular? And he's like, oh, immigration. Like, I thought we needed a different strategy and we couldn't run on a border wall. And he was right. So we do that now. And I feel like the same thing has happened on the left, where even if they're not gushing and admitting it, some of them are. I mean, some of these Democrats are saying, like Ron Klain, that the left was right about this. Like, they were shouting for us to do more stuff and we should have done more stuff, and now we can. I think it just happened in a big way with a lot of people at once, which kind of, I wouldn't say it surprised me, but I think there was definitely some takes. I remember David Sirota had a take last year about how Biden wanted to get elected and do austerity, and people were dragging him. And I disagree with Sirota sometimes. I was like, no, his take was based on what Biden and his advisors had said. It's like, had there been no pressure on them whatsoever, who knows what they'd be for. But they just kept staffing up and hiring people who felt otherwise. And, you know, there were these erratic stories where, does Biden want like a new deal, or is he going to tack it in? It was unclear where he stood, but people just convinced him that you needed to spend big, and he listened. I mean, it is just Biden being the central figure on this is really weird. If you know his history, you know how much he talked about like deficit reduction and spending cuts and all of that for most of his career. It is very strange that he's doing this, but he is. So that's the question we're figuring out now, like, why?
I contend the guy has always been a cipher. And so it's really, look at which way the wind is blowing, and then you'll know which way his sail is going to unfurl.
I think that's totally fair. And that's what I thought Trump would do more of, that, because he had just gotten into politics with just heterodox, I'd say, beliefs. That's to be generous. For example, like he seemed to be pro-gay marriage and stuff and said, I'm pro-LGBT. And then because his base demanded it, he's like, all right, I'll sign off on all these anti-trans orders, I guess. And like appoint a bunch of anti-LGBT judges. But I thought he would do more shifting towards what was popular. What he did instead was shifting towards what his base wanted, which is not always the same thing. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. The thing with Democrats is what their base wants is really, in many cases, economically, super popular. Is like, decriminalizing border crossings popular. That's not. Is, the Hyde Amendment, getting rid of that, and the government, quote unquote, funding abortions. That's not popular. But on the economics, like the left has been screaming, like, everyone wants this stuff. Like, look at the minimum wage ballot measure. Like, does it ever lose? No, it doesn't. Like, why are we not doing this already?
Let's, I want to ask you, and and maybe we'll have to do this next time because we're out of time. About where we're headed on the $15 minimum wage. Chris Coons was out there the other day saying, like, there were two provisions I didn't like in Bernie Sanders' bill, but I'm still interested in the $15 minimum wage. Do you know anything about that? Is he just like, what is he talking about?
I don't really know what he's referring to, because the minimum wage bill like phases in over time, and I don't think it's not $15 until 2025. And I'm from Delaware. Like, that's not a state that would be crippled by a $15 minimum wage by any means. I don't know what he's talking about. That did sound like blowing smoke. I wouldn't write off this discussion they're having now, where Democrats want Republicans to get on board for a like $11, $12 thing. But this is where I think the left's pressure on the filibuster is important. If McConnell believes there's a serious chance of Democrats changing rules and passing something, he just starts screaming, like, if you do this, we're going to blow the Senate up, we're going to pass concealed carry, we're going to do all this. So if the left just said, I guess we're done with this. This is why sometimes on Twitter I'll get frustrated people who say they didn't do $15 minimum wage in February, so they never intend to do it. And I was like, well, you should never, compliment Democrats for failing. But like, if you leave the field, there's no pressure on anything happening. If you just say, like, I guess they never intend to do this, then Republicans will say, phew. I mean, they left. Like, there's lots of things in the Obama era that they could stop caring about because people stopped agitating because they gave up. And so I think there actually is in Chris Coons's gut, like, the idea of a $12 minimum wage is not offensive to him. I don't think I've not interviewed him about exactly. I talked to him when he was running, because he had a DSA primary challenger last year. He was for raising it. He didn't say how much. So I would see if that actually works. But I feel like the role of people continuing to demand $15, and that's basically the entire labor movement, that's part of this, right? Like, this is all social welfare, from like, Otto von Bismarck to today is, there are people agitating for something that's a 10. What if I give them a 6? Right. That's just generally how this works.
Right. I find it hard to believe that there is really, at the beginning of the administration, beyond like the COVID relief bill, that there was a settled plan for any of this. And I think they're responding to, like I say, I think Joe Biden's a cipher. And I think the idea is that, like, they're going to, if they get good feedback on certain things that they do, they're going to follow that course much more than some type of ideological, Joe Biden agenda. I mean, he may shut the doors to certain things, but I think we will get a sense. But certainly it's going to be a function of how much people push. Dave Weigel, always a pleasure. Folks, check out the trailer. Just Google Dave Weigel, the trailer. We'll also put a link at majority.fm. As always, a pleasure, Dave.
Thanks. Good to talk to you guys.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Seneca Savoy of Austin DSA and Homes, Not Handcuffs. Be right back. Okay, well, I want to welcome to the program Seneca Savoy from the Austin DSA and Homes, Not Handcuffs. Seneca, I'm sorry, we have a couple of minutes here. Thank you so much for joining Emma and myself. Tell us about Homes, Not Handcuffs.
Yeah, I'll try and give the fast version of this, since usually this is like talk I've given a million times. So Homes Not Handcuffs started off as a coalition to decriminalize homelessness here in Austin, particularly 3 ordinances that have been in effect since 1997 to 2019. Those were no sitting, no lying, and no solicitation. So it was a Class C misdemeanor from the time I was homeless in high school until 2019 for you to sit down or lie down in public, for you to ask people for help or money in public at certain hours, and then to sit or lie down with your possessions, which is what they call camping, but includes sitting or lying down with your backpack, falling asleep in your car, etc. These things had up to $500 fines, and 90% of the time, those fines would turn into warrants for arrest. So you'd literally be arresting people for being too poor to find a place to sleep. So in 2019, we knocked a few thousand doors and got a unanimous vote at City Council to roll back these ordinances. And immediately, the chair of the local Republican Party, that's Matt Makoviak, founded an organization called Save Austin Now with one token Democrat who's not in any clubs, to reintroduce these, right? And so the main purpose here, like the fact that it fucks over homeless people is incidental to them. The primary purpose is to juice Republican turnout, right? So that's how they got their one QAnon member on Austin City Council, was through ginning people up around this, and to, you know, kind of further roll back criminal justice reform in Austin, right? Austin is the city that had the largest reduction in budget during, defund summer last year. Just elected Jose Garza, who is probably one of the leftmost district attorneys in the country, also an Austin DSA member. And there are a lot of people who want to put a lot of effort. They're raising $500,000 to try and pass this thing in a May election that'll probably have 25,000 people voting.
Wow.
And so we're trying to stop. So the main things that we need as the pack that we put together is real simple fundraising. We're able to get a lot out because we have so many volunteers. Over our first few weekends, we've now had over 150 150 people volunteer in terms of phone banking, friend to friend organizing. We're gonna have our first kickoff canvas. We just got 20,000 pieces of lit coming in. And so we're gonna do, as Austin DSA, our first canvas since Super Tuesday of last year. We already have 53 people interested, right, in the middle of COVID to come out. We have a lot more. Of course, most of your listeners are not in Austin. So the big thing is, if you're able to throw in a few bucks to our pack, we're incredibly efficient because we are spending 100% of that money on getting tools for our volunteers, like auto dialers that allow us to talk to a lot more people, lit so that we can go knock on doors, that sort of thing. And we need to talk to about 20,000 folks, right, in a relatively short span of time.
All right. Well, thank you. I mean, that's pretty tight. So, all right. Well, first off, what's the website? I want to make sure that we mention a way that people can get in touch with what you guys are doing, because we should say that, obviously this is, Austin, it seems to me to be on the forefront of these type of initiatives. I know over the course of the summer, they also, like you said, cut back on some of the police budget, and then also bought some hotels to provide housing for folks. I mean, these are very important programs that hopefully will create models for the rest of the country. And so maintaining what has been built in Austin has huge implications for people around the country.
Yeah, I very much agree on that, right? If this passes, right, if Prop B goes in the books, not only is it terrible policy that is going to ruin thousands of people's lives, right, especially when these eviction moratoriums roll off, is the first thing. But second of all, it's going, every single time we have a city council vote, in the back of every council member's head, they're gonna be like, I don't want another Prop B on the ballot, right? And so they're going to want to not kick the hornet's nest. And we're in a good position, right? Independently of the Homes Not Handcuffs effort, there has been a systematic attempt to canvass and recontact people who are supportive of defund during last summer. And that's incredibly successful, right? Tens of thousands of people have now been talked to about what actually happened during the budget last year, why it's good, and what it takes to continue that. And if we want to capitalize on that momentum, right, have 30,000, 40,000 people calling the city council again this year and have it matter, we can't have this hanging over our heads. Also, we won't have as much budget, right? Because if we're spending more money, the police overtime generated by these kind of nuisance laws just eats up the budget. We have the best paid police in the entire state right now, and they get paid hourly, right? So if you add this incredibly onerous activity that they can spend a lot of time ticketing, then that is taking away from what budget we'll have available during the next negotiation, et cetera.
Okay, so the website for people to go to, and we will put both the website and the Act Blue page in the description of our YouTube and our podcast. But so people hear this, no on Prop B 2021.org. That's a very straightforward site. No on Prop B 2021.org. Not only should you visit, donate, and your time, maybe your money, And that's also, if you're an Austin resident, that's the way you should vote, is what you're saying with that URL. All right. So remind us again when the election is, and what you think the chances are of pushing this back. I mean, it sounds like you guys have already just hit the ground running.
Yeah, so the initial polling amongst likely voters was slightly tilted on their side. Now, when we go to Democratic voters, it shifts significantly, right? So overall, of course, in a May 1st election, you expect a very rich white electorate. And I would expect that if we held the election tomorrow and it was the people who would vote on May 1st with no one telling them to vote, then Save Austin Now would win definitively. If we switch to Democratic voters, then it shifts significantly. Right. So we get among all Democratic voters about 56% in our favor. If we go to voters who are between the ages of 35 and below, right, so 18 to 35, then we're crushing them 60 to 20. So the turnout piece is really important. Now, of course, all of that polling was prior to Snowvid, right? So there was a period where tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people in Austin had a week of what it feels like to be homeless, right? No power, no water, etc. So we don't have polling after that, which could be a pretty significant shift in people's opinions.
Well, it's no on Prop B 2021, no on Prop B 2021. Seneca Savoy, I wish we had more time, but we'll have you back to get an update in the future. And we will be very explicit with the time zone next time. And appreciate your coming on, though. Really great stuff. I wish you luck.
Thanks.
All right, folks. For Emma and I, that's it for us today. We will see you tomorrow.
Just kidding.
We'll see you now. Exactly.
Psych.
Wow. That no on Prop B 2021 is they got it together. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they have really, that is great organizing there.
Yep.
And,
Austin is an organized city.
I was about to say, Austin's just paving the way for the rest of us leading down there.
It'll be interesting to see too, because, they're inviting all these tech companies to come down and they're basically building their second home from the Bay Area in Austin because of these tax rates that the state offers. But if these local people organize in this way, I feel like that could be quite a fight.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see. We will get updates on that for folks going forward. Joining us in the fun half today, No Me Key will be joining us. Do you switch that just for me?
I do.
That's very kind of you. That is very kind of you.
This is the first time you've noticed. It's been a year and a half. I think I've been doing it.
I have noticed, but it just occurred to me, I just saw you typing and I realized oh my God, she changes that for me. And because in the past I was like, wait a second, it hadn't even occurred to me, but now I realize, yeah, it's literally you just changed that for me, and then you have to change it back to normal when you're with normal people.
Basically, I used to put it it might still be in my Twitter bio, but this was, story of my life. Sam, you're not the first. I know you want to feel like you're special, but the reality is many, many, many Americans have had this issue.
That makes me feel a little bit better. Folks can check out your show today at 3 p.m. Is that not correct?
It is at 3 p.m. Eastern, even with the time difference. I know people are getting a little confused over that. It stays the same time, guys. Stays the same time. Do you find that too with your show?
Wait, people are getting confused that that your show doesn't abide by daylight savings time? I mean,
it's really weird, actually.
I think we have to as a society.
Well, no, I mean, what I don't understand is I got messages from people saying, is it still at 3 o'clock? I'm like, yes, everything's still at the same time. It's just the time changes.
Wow. These people,
quantum physics.
What have they been doing in the past when we did daylight savings?
I think COVID has really changed people's perspectives on time.
It certainly has mine. I'm just fried. I can't wait till spring. I just that's it. I'm done.
You have 6 days.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Well, not real spring.
Yeah.
It's
all right. Well, folks. Matt. What's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, we're recording a new literary hangover this weekend, but on Thursday night we'll be talking with Victor Pogge of The Intercept about Lula being free, or being free to run, I should say.
And Griscom interviewed Seneca and probably had a lot more time to talk to him, so folks can check that out, right?
Yeah, that's on the TMBS YouTube page. Go check that out. I believe that's public on the YouTube page. Yeah, I talked about the success Defund had in Austin.
Oh, okay. All right. Good stuff. And just a reminder, folks, you can support this program by becoming a member. Join themajorityreport.com. Join themajorityreport.com. Reminder.
Like the stream.
Like the stream. Poggers. We've got all sorts of crazy ass emojis going on on the Twitch stream.
Do you have a Harvey K one? Because I just learned we have a Harvey K one on our Twitch stream.
I think that means
we don't know
everybody
anything about
does,
it.
but I'm not sure because I have one, and people like can do it on other people's chats.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you can't. You may have created the Harvey K, but you don't own it.
Wait, it's not
You
proprietary.
can't contain him.
Yeah, you can't.
You cannot contain
Harvey K is public domain, obviously.
Immediately though, maybe we got to get a new. Maybe we got to get like a super Harvey K emoji. We like our emoji team is just. I'm sorry, is the emoticons that we got? It's just too good. Have you seen Emma? Have you seen the one with you with the thumbs up?
I have not. I've seen the one you sent me. It was like 40 of you, and I think I was in, but maybe that was the wrong thing.
No, there's a new one of you where you're doing this.
Oh, well, no, but that's inaccurate. I did this.
I know it. That's why we corrected it.
Or I know I did this. I did this.
You didn't see that, Noam. You don't know what we're talking
No,
about.
I don't.
No, I
It's worth hearing the story.
I put it on my Instagram. You might just want to just
look it up right now.
Yeah.
Do you guys get offended when the emojis people pick for you are not very attractive?
Do I?
I haven't even seen emojis
I've
people
seen
pick
of you.
for me.
Like,
I got one
the
of
chin's really big.
I was on the subway, early on living in New York, and I got kind of scammed by somebody who was like, "Let me draw a picture of you," and I didn't realize I'd be charged after. And I have the picture still. I look like Sarah Huckabee Sanders with like deep bags under my eyes. I was like, "This is offensive."
Is your hair big? It's the
hair
charcoal
big
on your eyes.
Yeah, lots of charcoal. So yeah, and then the guy was like, "That's $20." I'm like, "Well, I don't want it." So it's also insulting.
All right. Well, we're going to go. Don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. We will see you in the fun half 646-257-3920. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman.
I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're not paying.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back. Welcome to the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. Let's play this Michael Knowles clip. I know it's weird. Why am I starting off with Michael Knowles? Because we agree. Michael Knowles and I agree on the concept of cancel culture. I think, right? I think, well, you guys, you decide.
So that was actually an interesting statement. What do you think about that?
I think it's actually a very important point. I don't think that the central feature of cancel culture and PC and political correctness, I don't think it's a battle between free speech and censorship so much as it's a battle between competing sets of standards. So, of course, we all think that there should be accountability. You know, in the 1950s, if you openly espoused communism, you would be canceled in Hollywood or in the federal government, and I think that's perfectly right and just. The question here is, what are people being canceled for? This host of The Bachelor, I, like you, can't say that I've seen every single episode of that show, but what this host got canceled for was saying that maybe we should have grace, understanding, and compassion for things that people did years ago, like going to a party in college. That's all he said. But unfortunately, this guy made every wrong decision here. He, I thought, very
You're canceled if you went to a party?
girl and was gallant and chivalrous. But the minute that he thought he was going to lose his job, he threw her under the bus. He apologized for defending Grace. He thought that he could appease the mob, and that was just never going to happen.
I mean, it is a. I mean, the story was so ridiculous.
Should we just pause it here and just say, like, I agree with his take on cancel culture. There's always been cancel culture. We just didn't call it. We didn't hear people complain about it when it wasn't the right people getting canceled.
Yeah, we were fine to cancel anybody who attended a communist meeting back in the 50s or 60s, right? Those were the right kinds of people. Those were the deviants.
Indeed.
Then they could, and they would actually be canceled, right? In Hollywood, they couldn't get their jobs anymore. They were completely blacklisted. That's why it was called the blacklist. So, pretty sure that's a little bit more consequential than some off-brand Dr. Seuss books no longer being played.
Yeah. The FBI would follow you around for 40 years, and then you'd get a file like 60 years later, and it would be 3,000 pages of you just like going to McDonald's. That's canceling.
Yeah.
Paul Robeson versus Aunt Jemima, basically.
And to be clear, right, those examples that he's citing are just the most obvious ones that took place at that time. But there was a whole host of different things that could get you canceled. You show up at work and you're gay, you get fired. In fact, that still exists in, half the states in this country. You get fired. And so the idea that cancel culture is something new, it's competing values. And that's all it is that we're always going to have values and mores, and people are not going to support people that they don't appreciate what they're going out and saying. And corporations are always going to have things that they feel like we don't want to be associated with because that might hurt our bottom line. And that changes with what society feels is appropriate or inappropriate.
So they were talking about The Bachelor there? Oh, sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I guess they were talking about The Bachelor. I don't know anything about it.
Well, I do, but I won't say anything about it.
Well, do you know this story? Do you know the underlying
Great
story?
for ratings.
Yes. So,
how did you miss this, Sam?
I actually didn't. The Rangers and the Knicks were on last night, so I didn't get to watch the finale. But I got spoiled the other day. Basically,
Wait, are they shooting The Bachelor during?
They have a
during COVID?
quarantine situation at Nemacolin in Pennsylvania, and but everyone's swapping spit. It's disgusting.
Why didn't they do Survivor? Why? All right.
Well,
That's next cycle. Next
that
year.
doesn't make the money that The Bachelor does, which is a ridiculous enterprise that has been filled with like lots of racism. So they have the first black lead. He picked
After how many seasons?
I mean, there's been like
30?
20 seasons of The Bachelorette, something like that, and then like 30 Bachelors. I mean, there have
What
been
channel is
two
The Bachelor on?
ABC.
ABC.
That's why.
The mini Fox.
Right. Well, so
the cultural Fox.
So he ended up picking a white girl who had gone to like Southern antebellum parties that were outlawed because they were basically about slavery. And then I think they broke up because she was a racist.
Well,
and
let
so
me give
she
you the
got
update
canceled.
on that. They interviewed him. I'm with my mom right now, so of course I'm watching mom shows.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they
I have
interviewed
no
him this
excuse.
morning on Good Morning America. So just a little update there. And he's working through his issues. He's very concerned about the breakup. When he learned about this, he thinks she's a good person, but she has some work to do, and he's not going to date for now, and he still has feelings for her, and he's just going to take time to process.
Yes, they picked, of course, a black Republican for their first black lead. So I digress. Thank you, ABC.
That part I didn't realize. Is there any more to this, Michael Knowles? Or do we hear the good part, essentially, where he was all in favor of the?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. And Nomiki and Emma filled us in on the rest of it, basically.
I gave that.
We
that
never
was,
do this again.
That was valuable context. Me talking about
Absolutely.
reality TV was for the first time valuable context.
I like the idea of Gina Carano basically being the modern Dalton Trumbo or something.
Exactly. But she lands in, and let's be clear, she immediately walked into a huge multi-picture deal with Ben Shapiro's film company. So, I mean, she's not canceled.
I really don't talk too negatively about those because I want those to get made because
I know.
No, but it's going to be like The Passion of the Christ. It's going to be mainstreamed, right? Like,
I don't think Ben has that sort of distribution ability.
No.
I also
Heritage
think
Foundation's going to make it work.
it's going to be like those movies with the Sabrina the Teenage Witch, God is Dead, or what God's Not Dead. That's what it's going to be like. Did you guys ever see the trailers to those?
I didn't see that, but
They
I'll tell
were
you something. If
nuts.
there's a GoFundMe for Shapiro's movie, if he writes the script, I'm in. I will.
No, he just does distribution is the thing. He gets kind of hack writers to do it for him.
Well, he could definitely write something hacky. I don't think that would be a problem at all.
They could just put it on Facebook and it would get more views than like any of the Oscar-nominated documentaries.
Any freelance writers who want everybody to laugh should go undercover to participate in Ben Shapiro's screenwriting endeavors, and then maybe just leave some Easter eggs for the Majority Report audience in the script.
I want to just take a moment to change gears here and talk about this story. It's just stunning, and we've talked about the ACA ad nauseum around here for years in terms of like what's good about it, and what's bad about it. What's good about it? Patient protections. That was really essential, so that when you get insurance, we basically have a minimum standard for what we consider to be health insurance. We don't call a car that has no engine a car. You can't go out and sell that and say, well, you bought the car. The other part of the ACA that was good was the expansion of Medicaid. You had 10, 11 million people or so, maybe a little more, get Medicaid to get health insurance for the first time. And it is available to anyone who makes 138% or less of the poverty line. And the way that this worked was states, because the Supreme Court essentially said,
the federal government, for whatever reason, cannot mandate the expansion of Medicaid. Originally, that was the plan. We give you more money. We give you about 90% of the costs for the first, or we give you close to 100% of the costs first year or two. And then after that, we pick up 90% of the cost. And you got to take the expansion because you're already doing the existing Medicaid now. We're just covering a bigger cohort of people. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. And people were shocked by that ruling. Nevertheless, it stands. And so you have still 12 Republican-controlled states in the country that do not have Medicaid expansion. So in this stimulus bill, the COVID-19 relief bill, the Democrats wrote into the bill that not only will you have to pay nothing to expand Medicaid, this applies to literally millions of people. Millions of people would get Medicaid expansion if these 12 holdout states agreed to it. And so instead of saying, not only did they say you don't have to contribute a dime to Medicaid, they actually basically said, we're going to pay you almost double the cost of it. So it's going to cost you $100 to cover everybody in your state on Medicaid. Obviously not $100. I'm using this as an example. It's going to cost you $100. We're going to give you $200. You're going to make money by, not as a knock-on effect of covering your citizens of your state, because you're going to save money in a myriad of ways because they're getting good health care or decent health care, depending on the availability of it. You're going to actually make money. We're going to pay you extra money to take this money to provide health care. And all of them have said no. Every single one of these Republican-led states have said no. They don't have an excuse anymore. They just saw a story where they just focused on the Mississippi governor, because I guess he was the most recent one to say, to announce that he would be not taking the money. Listen to this. It would cover, there are 2.2 million people in those 12 Republican states who could get health insurance. In Mississippi, it would be 200 to 300,000 people in the state would be eligible. There was the COVID-19 relief bill will give them $600 million over 2 years to expand Medicaid. 60% of those people who would gain health insurance as a result of Medicaid expansion in Mississippi would be people of color. The vast majority of those people are Black. The Medicaid expansion would cost $290 million, but they're offered $600 million.
But Sam, isn't that about, like, it's not about actually solving the problem. That's just their excuse that they can't afford it.
Well, they can't say that they don't
have an excuse anymore.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's just their excuse.
That was their excuse. But now it's like, we can't afford to get an extra $310 million.
That's
what he says is, in fact, there was a Senate Public Health Committee Chair, Hob Bryant, a Democrat in Mississippi, said that there will be more money in the state treasury if we expand Medicaid. If we don't, for a number of years, the federal government's been offering us $1 million a day to take care of sick people. Now they're offering us $1 million a day to take that other $1 million a day. You can't make this stuff up. But yet the governor my position has not changed. I'm opposing expanding Medicaid in Mississippi because they just don't believe it's good for people to get government run healthcare. I mean,
and also the Mississippi state that you listed, like, if there's a disproportionate amount of poverty, and it's there seems to be with their Black constituents, they're just genuinely not interested in helping them because those aren't the people that vote for them, and they can ride racism and Republican identity to the polls for victory for the foreseeable future. So it's just like, they're not interested in helping people. What's the incentive?
I mean,
also-
it really does seem to be like racism at this point, because I was actually talking to a public health official in South Carolina last week, and she was talking to me about like how, you know, she talked to legislators in the state on both sides, and they're basically saying there's no way we're going to expand Medicaid even before this. And it was her, I believe, that like it's a holdover from this being part of Obama still, like that this could be the case.
Well, I don't know if I mean, yes, it's racism, but it's also for-profit insurance companies. If you can see just a little here, that's the slow move into Medicare.
But Medicaid's managed by for-profit companies.
For-profit companies, you're right.
Yeah, I really just think at a certain point they want to punish Black people for being sick and being poor, and there's like this tension.
Yes,
in
and.
those... Sorry.
Yes, and. I mean, Mississippi is the poorest state in the union. I think it's yes, and there's something else. Like that's always, I think, the root. But
yeah, well, they make active decisions to remain at the bottom of the country in education, at the bottom of the country in terms of, you know, quality of life and poverty, or I guess wealth. I guess they choose to kind of subjugate primarily Black citizens in their state, and they don't really care or see them as a part of the active constituency that they need to serve.
And I would say, I think also the calculation is this. I mean, there's a lot of data that suggests that people on Medicaid don't tend to vote as much as other people, largely because they're probably in districts where there's less polling booths, and that they can't take time off from work, or whatever those reasons are. But I would imagine, despite that, the calculation is whatever number of new voters happen to get engaged and vote because they're getting health care and their lives are made somewhat more easier. May not be that many, but the majority of them are not going to vote for me. And I think that's basically what it comes down to. They know that those folks, by and large, are not going to vote for them, and they're just willing to screw them. And it is just what is even more reprehensible is that they're not, and maybe it's just not well publicized in Mississippi. People don't know the issue, but it is just sort of stunning that they're just not in any way like face the electoral consequences for this. I mean, it's
also an us versus them, like old school Southern mentality that it's hard for sometimes, I think, people in the North to understand. I mean, my sister did a ton of great work. She you know, went to the biggest prison. Now I'm blanking on it. She was anyway, my stepsister and my sister have both done work with prison projects in Louisiana too. And you just kind of see the like old school slavery mentality that has just permeated and still remains. And I think Mississippi would be similar in that area. God, why can't I remember the name of that prison?
Do you know what other states there were?
Angola. She did some work covering that, and my stepsister works for the Innocence Project, and it's just like hard to overstate how intensely us versus them and just removed white people are down there from really experiences of Black people in many ways.
Well, and I mean, the reality is that it also will affect poor white people in the South.
Without doubt.
So it is pitting people against each other, but one's going to point at the other.
I mean, if you look at, you know, all you need to do is go back and look at sort of those Jim Crow era laws that kept people from voting. They were perfectly fine with, we will disenfranchise some poor white people too, who may be illiterate or may not be able to pay the poll tax. You know, I'm talking now over 100 years ago, 140 years ago or so, but that was the plan. Hasn't changed too much.
Well, what is their position on this though? Like, what justification is there to not expand this? And there's interest that in these states that would want to expand it,
you don't
including
want
insurance and hospital groups.
You don't want the safety net to be a hammock. You don't want the safety net to be a hammock.
You don't want feeders to be fed, because that's how they look at people, as excess feeders, honestly. Like
yes.
like Luke Mayville did the work in Idaho to expand it by a ballot initiative, and it was very, Michael was out there. It was a very inspiring process because people were like, yeah, I don't think people should go without health care. They passed that, and the Republicans, even though they got bipartisan support to pass, Republicans fought it legally and even tried to like do lawfare on Luke Mayville, saying he did some sort of like election fraud stuff. So like these are psychos. Republicans in state governments are absolute psychos who like think hungry or poor people should be hungry.
They want to make it as easy. Sorry, Brendan.
Nothing.
No, they want to make it as easy as possible for Black people to die. They really they like have a resentment against them that's baked in like Republicans in power there. And
and even in Idaho, it's like it's even poor people. Like it is, they just think like, do not procreate if you're poor. You should not have the money or material like sort of comfort to reproduce yourself.
Well, this is, we talked about, we've been talking about this for years. I mean, this is why Donald Trump did so well on that stage, because it's the inverse of that, of that doctrine, right? If you're poor, you're morally reprehensible. You're in the wrong. You're poor because of you've made mistakes and you deserve what you get. But if you're rich, then you're rich because of you, and you are morally to be applauded, and you are righteous, and you are in the know. And that's why Donald Trump gets up on that debate stage with all the other Republicans, and it's just like, there's nothing they can say. Everything he says trumps, forgive the pun, because he's a rich guy. And that's what they have been, that is their whole political philosophy.
Isn't there some sort of legal pushback? I mean, if they do make it so clearly racist, I mean, there's got to be some sort of federal. I mean, I'm just very curious about where this goes. And then yeah, I mean, not accepting the funds, putting people. No, there's nothing there.
It's just a straight on. You can't. I mean, this is. Is
it just southern states though, or is it?
Well, there's 12 states. I mean, they're the Republican ones. I would imagine the vast majority of them are Republican. Off the top of my head, I don't know which ones they are, but. This is the argument why you must federalize these things. Instead of you give the money to the states you make this a federal program. They have no participation in deciding whether they're eligible any more than they do whether, people are eligible for Social Security. That's just basically the bottom line. All right. We missed this Dave Rubin clip. So we're going to do a double shot of Dave Rubin. And
oh my God, is that gonna kill me? It's like
this might be difficult
death wish.
For people.
Great.
Brain damage.
Yeah.
Let's do a double shot of Rubin. Dumb and Dumber. I don't know what you would title this. I mean, and I don't know which one is dumber, frankly. But let's just start chronologically. So, as you know, I think most everybody knows, the jury's being selected for the trial of Derek Chauvin. He was initially charged with first-degree and second-degree murder. A judge ultimately tried to prevent, and then I guess it was allowed that he could also be charged with third-degree murder. Now, I don't know how. I mean, I presume this was obvious to everyone who was, above the age of, I don't know, 20, 21, maybe 15, that first-degree murder is a more serious charge and a harder to prove charge than second-degree murder. Second-degree murder, not all states, I think, have third-degree murder, or call it that. Second-degree murder is a more serious charge and harder to prove than third-degree murder, right? It's like, if you can prove first-degree murder, it's more serious. You don't need to prove second and third-degree murder. They become extraneous at that point. But a prosecutor going into a case will sometimes provide multiple charges, try and prove each one of those charges because the threshold is lower in terms of the intent or the forethought or the behavior of the alleged perpetrator.
Now, why am I telling you this remedial stuff that most of you already know? Because you watched one crime drama once, or you read one article once, or you just get that by osmosis by being an adult. Well, Dave Rubin, my understanding, is above the age of 30. I mean, I don't know how old Dave Rubin is, but listen to this. He's got a theory that because he read, I know exactly the article he read too. He read this CNN article because I saw him do, well, just play this.
That's the point, that if they had gone for the first degree and second degree, virtually everybody across the political spectrum and all over the world would have said justice was done here if he was convicted of those two things. But now by taking this leap, they're setting us up for further destruction. They're setting us up for further upheaval. But in essence, you're making a great point here that Attorney General Keith Ellison, he's ramping up a charge that sounds like it will be very hard to convict on. So I think he's intentionally going with this high charge, and short of a full conviction, and I think whatever that means, even if there was a full conviction, they would still find a way to go ahead with the violence they have planned, because that's part of the battle right now. It's not just a legal battle, it's a cultural battle.
So let me be clear on what he's saying here, because he had another clip on his own show, like a day before, where he was making the same case, that the third degree charge was brought in because it would be too steep a hill to climb. And therefore, people, once he got convicted of first and second degree murder, according to Dave Rubin, third degree, they wouldn't be able to convict him of, which was a lesser offense. It has a different, instead of like an intent to kill, it's like I believe it's like a reckless disregard in Minnesota state law, reckless disregard for human life, and that they wouldn't be able to prove that. And that's what would be the premise for the rioting. And of course, that is wrong. Here it is the other day. This is what he did the other day.
But in essence, he now is going for a third degree murder charge. And what's happening is you can sort of see that this whole thing is being set up. So he's going to get acquitted basically of third degree murder, because third degree murder, without getting too much into all of the specifics, but you should do a little Googling on your own. In essence, third degree murder is like if you drove your car intentionally into a crowd of people to kill a lot of people, or you started firing into a crowd intentionally, just maiming people. First degree and second degree, that's probably what's more applicable in this. But Keith Ellison is throwing that third degree charge in there in a way, in my estimation at least, because he wants riots and he knows that this will make it harder to convict. And thus, when he doesn't get convicted of all of the things, even if he gets convicted of first degree and second degree murder, which probably will happen, if he doesn't get convicted of third degree, that will be the excuse for the violence. And it is my belief at this point that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party wants violence. They want there to be mayhem. Those are their foot soldiers.
Yes, Keith Ellison, he coincidentally, the black attorney general, he's just, stoking
Muslim too.
He wants violence.
Yeah,
obviously.
it's so dumb.
No,
in
he
my
thinks,
defense, can we just focus on what's going on?
Yes.
And there's a CNN piece. If you Google it, you'll find the CNN piece he read, because that's where the example comes from that he gives, right?
I thought he was Googling first degree burn.
I think he's just and he stopped
right, that's
reading.
what he thinks it is.
Yes.
No, but third degree burns are worse.
Yes.
Right. That's
what
what
I'm
he
saying.
thinks it is.
He thinks it's reverse.
Yeah, he
Right.
thinks a third degree murder is the worst because it
Yeah,
builds
well-
on each other, like burns, like Nomi said.
I was actually thinking about black belts, and is it not true that a third degree black belt is harder to get than a first degree one? I rest my case.
First grade, then second
What's
grade,
also
then
awesome
third
is-
grade.
So this guy, he did the second video he did, I think at least a day before he appeared on whatever Newsmax or OWN or whatever that was. So there's nobody, either none of his fans were like, hey, Dave, just a heads up, you got it backwards, man. It's backwards. Your whole theory is half baked. Or he doesn't pay attention on his locals. This is so you can contact me, pay $500, you can contact me. Or just no one around him either pays attention to what he says or is smart enough to realize, like, hey, wait a second, man, no, you got it backwards. Your whole theory is completely wrong because you have it completely backwards. Nobody told him.
Nobody told him in 24 hours. And he must not check Twitter because people are laughing at him for days.
Well, the Democrats aren't going to be happy until there's a 4th-degree murder, then a 5th-degree murder, then a 6th-degree murder.
Just going to keep laying them on. Numbers after numbers.
The radical Democrats want 10 degrees of murder.
And violence on the streets. What I don't understand is, like, aren't they all supposed to get the same talking points? Why is it Dave Rubin is always left off the list?
Because he's not in the club. No one wants to hang out with this dude who's not, like, we've said this all the time. He wants so badly to be buddies with Ben Shapiro, but Ben Shapiro is pretty, like, icked out that he's a man that sleeps with another man.
Oh, and I would imagine, too, that it's like when he's like, can I get some talking points? Glenn Beck's like, it doesn't matter what you say. Just
also, like, I wonder how that dynamic is, because I think how do you think Dave actually feels about Glenn Beck?
Oh, I think that Dave is I don't know. I don't know him personally. But all I can imagine is just like, great guy, very good businessman.
Right. Well, yeah, he's a yeah, okay.
Did he used to film in his studio? Do you remember when Glenn Beck had those studios and all these other hosts would film, like Tommy Lahren?
So.
No, because Rubin, he hasn't left LA, right?
He's been in LA the whole time.
Yeah, Rubin tries to get in. His key card doesn't work, though.
So Dave Rubin seems to be still on this sort of like Law and Order kick. You know, he was explaining to people the other day about the differences between 1st and 2nd and 3rd degree murder, and had a theory about why Chauvin was going to be charged with 3rd degree murder. But now he's moved over to Law and Order SVU, I guess. And here he is opining about Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy.
Well, what about Miss Piggy? Because Miss Piggy was basically sexually accosting and physically abusing Kermit the Frog all the time, right? Kermit wasn't really into Piggy. Piggy was beating the crap out of him. She beat the crap out of a lot of people. You know, I'm pretty sure she raped him at some point. Like, there was definitely something going down there. We didn't see it all on air, but, like, you know, they've got to come for everything.
Except they're not coming for that. You made that up.
It's right.
That's all he can handle. But to be fair, I would rather have Dave Rubin talk about these things than to sneak into, the murder trials. That would be appropriate. Like, stick with that audience.
The left doesn't want you to watch. Go ahead, brother. I was just going to say the left doesn't want you to watch Johnny Bravo anymore because of the way he propositions women.
You know, I'll tell you something. I watched with Saul Ghostbusters, the original. You know, we got to go through every movie that is in every series, and you got to start at the one first, and then have the second, and then the third. And
just like the Marvel movies, that's his,
exactly.
That's what he needs.
But Ghostbusters was one of the and Ghostbusters was I think I was a little bit older when that was made, but when I was a teenager, the comedies that were made are to revisit them now, we're so horrific in this way. It's stunning. And even Ghostbusters, which I had to, first of all,
how
Bill
about
Murray,
16 Candles when like the blonde
Porky's,
kid tries to rape that girl.
All of it is just horrific to watch now. And Ghostbusters, Bill Murray is super rapey in it. Attitudinally towards the lead woman. Women in that movie are represented. There is a scene where the city is being attacked by all these ghosts, and the mayor's freaking out, and he's assembled his entire sort of administration in his office. The Ghostbusters come in, and you look around, you look at those like 12 people in that office, and you realize they're all men. They're all men. And except for the 4th Ghostbuster, they're all white men.
Which isn't what the city was like back then, to be fair. Like, the administrations weren't even like that.
It could, without a doubt. It's just stunning that I think like the amount of, it is extreme. I think it's just telling
as to like, and this is, look, I watched this movie when I was in my teens. I don't remember when it came out, but I was certainly in my teens. And the bottom line is like, this is what we're seeing today is a function of that. Is people, men, white men predominantly, watching these, growing up on these movies, growing up in this culture and saying like, what happened? You know, if there's not 12 white guys in this office and there's now like maybe some black guys or maybe some brown guys and maybe some white and brown and black women in there, there's less slots for me. I've lost.
Well, that was
I
that
now,
insane.
My
insane-
measure of mediocrity is not going to get me in that room anymore. Now I got to be that much. I got to be in the top 4 of the 12 guys instead of being like number 8 or 10 or 11.
That was that insane reaction to the female Ghostbusters movie too, though.
Right.
Sam, do you remember that? Like, that movie wasn't that good. I saw it, but before it even came out, like it's just anyway. Just that's a good example for that reason, because people went nuts when like the Kristen Wiig.
That's what this is all
Leslie
about,
Jones
though,
one.
is that now they're making those movies. Society has changed. It hasn't gotten to where it should be yet, but it's changed. But to look back at where it was just, 40 years ago,
Well, and like
is nuts.
And when there are really inappropriate books that that publishers decide to take off the market because children are being indoctrinated by watching and reading these things. I mean, there's a way of preserving film and recognizing it for its historical context, and also like look at Mad Men. I mean, I know, Emma, you've been watching Mad Men, right?
I haven't been tweeting about it.
Not at all. It's an illustration of that time. I mean, there are few people of color in it. I haven't seen it in 10 years. So I can't remember, but it was an illustration. And so when you're watching, you're like, oh my God, this is horrifying. This was, my grandfather worked in that building. Like, 3 martini lunch. Like, this is what they used to do. It's a different way of interpreting it. And so like,
well, it condemns it. It's a feminist show. And now there are black characters in season 5 as the office gets integrated. But yes, it's like, it's about how racist and sexist these men are. Right.
But like for these guys, it's not just that they're being challenged with the reinventions of these movies and the cancellations. Their identities are being challenged. It's like going to a therapist. It's being like forced to go into conversion therapy and converting into like being a wholesome, empathetic progressive, essentially. Those are the breakdowns I see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing like the this sort of I contend that's a big part of what we're seeing. And Donald Trump sort of like said, "Wait a second, I can turn the clocks back a little bit," and Barack Obama was like, basically showing people how was basically like female Ghostbusters, like we're gonna, you rubbing it in our face. Well, no, we're just actually just existing in a world that probably the way the world should be. And it just feels like it's being rubbed in your face. And that's really a function of your defensiveness. I mean, it's stunning.
But how do you prevent the violent outbursts, violent reactions to that? I mean, that I think ultimately is what the Biden administration is really struggling with, is we are going to progress as a society. Hollywood is going to be hopefully a little bit, as they showed in the Oscars nominations. But the reaction is so violent. And I mean, Emma and I know what we see on Twitter against women, even on our side. It's so incredibly violent. What's to be done about it other than, breaking up these platforms?
Oh, well, I mean, I wouldn't break up the platforms for that because it's not going to change it. I think it's basically going to be
racist and sexist designed algorithms. I think.
Oh,
yeah.
Without a doubt. No, that is a separate, but that's a separate, that to me is they're just trying to get engagement. What needs to be done, I mean, I think is you try and contain the violence as much as you can. I mean, I think there are things that can mitigate it a little bit, but ultimately the big change is going to come about when more old people like me die. Honestly, like that, it's going to be time. I mean, that's the way.
But Dave Rubin exists and Ben Shapiro exists.
Yeah, but oh no, you're not going to eradicate it. But his audience is going to get smaller and smaller,
and their audiences are going to get smaller and smaller, and the appetite for this is going to get smaller and smaller. It's going to get more. It's going to get more and more intense as it gets smaller and smaller because it's a Masada type of complex.
I do think it's manifesting in a new form with younger people, though, in a different way than you're saying, Sam. With Ben Shapiro's audience is fairly young, I would imagine.
I agree, but I think Ben Shapiro's audience is if Ben Shapiro existed, if there was somehow to make him exist 40 years ago, his audience would be a fraction of people who feel this way. Now, I think his audience there's a lot of people who feel that way. Like he represents a bigger portion of those people. In other words, yes, Ben Shapiro is going to exist, but if you take his audience, even if it's 1 million people, Steven Crowder gets a 3 million, viewers, it's still significantly less than what it would have been 20 years ago and 30 years ago. Yeah. And the appetite for it is becoming less, and it's indicative of just sort of it's the same thing with cancel culture, right? I mean, it's just it has changed. It's not, we're not there yet.
I think it's manifested more than maybe you think. I think it's taken on different forms, and it might be more persistent and pernicious than just a generational thing. It's internalized misogyny and racism and.
I agree. And I'm not even saying that the intensity is necessarily less, but the numbers are less. They just are. Otherwise, there wouldn't be, you wouldn't, women would still be considered chattel.
But it's not going down. I think it's yes. Okay. So the numbers are less, but it's peaked again. It's rising, and then there's a limit. There's a limit.
There's a white knuckle effect. The as it slips, as you lose this status, you get more angry about it, and you don't have to just simply rely on the mechanisms of society to take care of it for you.
Well, and the people that aren't as angry are self-sorting out, so it's radicalizing in that sense too.
Yeah, I think so. That doesn't necessarily mean the intensity, but they wouldn't have to say this stuff before because it was just everybody understood it. It's just the way that society operated. And now it's and so I'm not saying that I think the violence is or the intensity of it is going to go down. It may actually continue to go up as there's less actual people who agree with this attitude. The more you're going to get a more intense crowd of people who are going to be doing more desperate things, I think, to try and maintain that status and that power.
I don't want us to overlook the fact that at one point in this video, Dave Rubin refers to Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog as not seeing what happens off screen, as though they are living things and not puppets.
Well, that's very confusing for him because they talk.
Can I just, I also, oh, go ahead. Brendan, you're going to say?
I just said I know. It is confusing.
So I'm on YouGov, and as far as the Ben Shapiro show, most popular with baby boomers, 27%, 20% Generation X, and 25% millennials. So that's kind of the breakdown there.
I think it's maybe the Beliebers, they'll all age out, right? It's like what happens with every teen pop sensation. I mean, I think Ben Shapiro's lost a little bit of a step even recently, and how teen pop stars, they have fans, or the One Direction fans, and then they all grow up out of their 14-year-old selves, and that's the equivalent to what
his voice is
his voice is changing. The audience in itself is so much smaller than Rush Limbaugh's audience. So in that sense, Sam, you're right. Fox's views are going down. They're all over the place with their messaging. It's clearly, a 65 plus audience. I don't know what OWN is and Newsmax, but I'm sure it's
undoubtedly
nothing.
Yep.
So the reality is the landscape is absolutely smaller. And if they're cracking down on Q sites, maybe it'll fizzle out, but I think it's about the concentration, right? How concentrated is the extremism, and is that concentration continuing to grow even though they're playing whack-a-mole with these sites?
Yeah, I mean, but I think that these feelings of misogyny and racism exist outside of these outside of these social media. I think they get the social media may help generate some of it, but I mean, I think it exists.
Look at the anti-maskers. It's the anti-maskers. I mean, they can play a big role. I mean, maybe the identity didn't. I mean, maybe somebody becomes the anti-masker from a friend of theirs, but doesn't read the QAnon site. But it's facilitated there.
Oh, without a doubt. I guess my argument is just that this misogyny and racism has been there. It is just more, obvious to us at this moment than it was, let's say, 20 years ago, maybe, because there are actual changes. They're actually, like, the misogynist and the racist worldview is under more threat now than it was then. And so the intensity grows. And I think that's what we're seeing. Like, there is an inverse sort of relationship between the numbers of people and the intensity of their feelings.
I think we see that with race, with the anxiety about the Browning country too.
Yes.
That's why Trump juiced that and exploited it.
I mean, I have can we play that thing of you and me, Sam? It's 5 seconds long.
Oh, sure. This is pretty fun.
So Brendan just sent this to us. I don't know where it's from. But someone posted, I guess it's from Reddit.
It's a glitch.
Look at
It's
this.
from a Midwest leftist posted.
Okay.
So this is from last Friday, right? Watch Emma and I. There we go. That's nuts.
Oh my God. It's just like, that freaks me out a little bit. It's because you're like one of the 2 people I see on a regular basis. And that's what it is.
Whenever I nod, I can't tell. Maybe we were in sync. It was also,
I stopped lying. There's like a little sign that says nod now.
Nod,
applause now.
Nod.
Well, we choreograph it before the
Faro,
show.
That's exactly right.
I wonder what it means, guys. What are you trying to tell the audience?
Well, it's like Francesca was just going like this to us.
She's very melodic.
I could not get over that. Yeah, yikes.
And I saw the thing.
I gotta reevaluate. Yeah, I gotta reevaluate.
We got to update the CGI.
Yeah, right.
I don't know much about this Brooklyn dad guy, to be honest with you.
Oh man, come on.
What?
I don't know either. I mean, I know he's getting paid basically by Democratic think tanks to be a Krasenstein type, right?
Yeah, but guys, this isn't a. I mean, I'm not trying to. It deserves
I'm not
anger, but it's like, duh. This has been going on forever. You didn't know that these guys have contracts. It's fully disclosed. It's been disclosed, so it's not on his Twitter. Here's a secret. Like, every single surrogate in the neoliberal world is paid through an entity. Like, maybe they have a firm, maybe they don't. They're all getting paid. I don't know why this is the one that blew up.
I mean, I never even.
I think it's because his posts are particularly unengaging and silly, and I mean,
and his name is funny. Yeah, it's fun. It's like the brand too, which is like, I'm defiantly taking this money to, for my speech on Twitter.
But like, all those people, the Krasensteins, the people that went on, all the surrogates on CNN during the Hillary campaign, they were all either parts of the super PACs or getting paid by the DNC or getting paid by Hillary. They never disclosed it. In fact, one time I remember calling them out, and then the host the next time, Federico Woodfield, had to call out Maria Cardona for.
I don't think it's that people are like that he's getting paid so much as like there are people paying him for this product, basically.
Got it. Well, yeah, that's it.
Should we play it? I mean,
it's pretty funny.
All right, let's play this. I mean, I got to be totally honest. Until this whole thing blew up, I was like, honestly, when I saw people talking about Brooklyn Dad, I thought, like, I saw it trending because I never heard of the guy throughout this whole cycle. Never heard of him. And I saw it trending, and I'm like, I wonder if, like, I am like a Brooklyn Dad.
Like I thought it was like some mockery, like
You
boomer.
thought they
And you were
figured
the new
out
Karen.
I thought it was I thought it was like a
Yeah.
Karen, and I'm
Derogatory
like,
term.
Yeah,
they figured
I
out
thought, like
Sam's superhero name.
yeah, I thought like, oh God, I better look this up because somebody's gonna mock me with it. I should at least know what they're talking about. And then I was
It is now.
what? Like what? But all right, so here is the actual Brooklyn Dad. Is it Brooklyn Dad Defiant?
Yes.
Like I don't
Yes.
even get that. But and here he is. Apparently, and I know, did he have in his Twitter bio the like head of the pack or something? I don't know. I didn't read too far into this controversy, but supposedly he had it disclosed in his Twitter bio. Not necessarily that he was getting paid to tweet, but that he was part of the pack or something that ultimately was paying him. But apparently he got fed up with everybody pointing that out and making fun of him. And here's his reaction.
They say I'm a paid shill. I'm a neoliberal corporatist shill. Nobody pays me to tweet. A guy approached me. He was like, you know what? Brooklyn Dad, you're really good at Twitter. Now Brooklyn Dad gets paid money. What kind of capitalism is this? I used my considerable graphic design talents, rose Twitter. They came at me like Trumpers. They're worse than Trumpers. Stop putting the loss of Bernie on us. Trolls on the far left, they don't want Democrats to win. They believe
Wait, pause it.
something.
For autographed copies, visit Brooklyn Dad. Okay. I just want to show that he's selling autographs on his website. Brooklyn
We should
Dad
bring him-
Defiant.
We should bring him in to consult on our show to help us.
I was
you
going
know.
to say, is he wearing a Brooklyn Dad Defiant beanie cap? Like,
He's got the merch and plugs going.
And why didn't he just
I
stay
see.
at Brooklyn Dad? Why does he have to add Defiant on the end? It's just like a little bit mealy mouthed.
There are some Brooklyn dads who are not defiant. There's some Brooklyn
Yeah,
dads
not
who
to
are
name any
comfortable.
names.
Not
naming any names.
I get it. Where's my beanie? Where's my Brooklyn Dad? Not so defiant hat.
Wait, what is this light around the door?
I've never
Little
seen
bit.
any of this.
It looks like my
quite a
college dorm
setup.
room.
It does.
That's like what I did to make my dorm room a little, a little more kitschy.
Yeah, that and the Van Gogh painting, the print.
But wasn't this guy basically just slamming Bernie during the thing, or do I?
Yeah.
Not, okay,
Yeah.
so it's just he doesn't like the pushback. Well, I mean, there it is. I mean,
I mean, it went viral basically because somebody went through these, was it the FEC disclosures, and screenshotted the item line that said how much money, like 60,000.
60,000. Yeah.
I go to him, and that image, I think, is what people really were
He
reacting.
discovers what accelerationism is too, and defines that for us in this video too, which is kind of funny.
Mm.
We don't need to play the record.
Here is let's they are really floundering around at Fox right now. It really is a problem. I mean, they're going to settle on immigration, I think, because that's just like the muscle memory is just too strong.
Right.
And because Biden, it has to do something. They apparently are getting like some type of Texas like civic center where they're going to house a lot of these migrant children. They're going to have to figure out a different mechanism. These children, I would imagine the vast, overwhelming majority of these children have family in this country. They have an aunt, they have an uncle, they have a cousin, a brother, a sister, mom or dad, and we should send them with them as soon as, and we have the ability to do this, right? I mean, we can send a Land Rover to Mars. We can find their family.
And
we
the
can call them.
part of the problem that the reason the Biden administration isn't doing that already, because they are terrified of what the right is going to say if they let these children go to family members in the United States, which is what makes holding them past the legal limits pretty unconscionable.
Also, there's a surge. The surge is, I mean, since he got elected, it's just unmanageable.
No doubt. Yes, I mean, there's a huge number of people, and you got to do it. And that's what you can place them with the families, and
deal with the humanitarian issue first and then deal with the political issue second. And so that it's going to come back around. But in the meantime, Fox is just flailing around. They haven't quite figured out what they're going to do in terms of their new narrative. And so they're going to go back on the slavery wasn't that bad, was it? Or, I mean, we talked about it. Here's Brian Kilmeade.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't know about your schools, but no one ever ducked the brutality of slavery. I remember in 6th grade watching Roots and seeing that in display. Go watch it back. No one was soft pedaling that. It was evil, it was wrong. Nobody ever soft pedaled that part of our past. But it doesn't mean what they launched with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution didn't change the world as we know it and lives as we live it.
So Cardinal Dolan made a good.
What? I love when white people of a certain age fall back on roots. Just expand your consciousness just like a tiny bit outside of the TV movie that you watched when you were young.
Okay, let me just correct you, Emma. It was not a TV movie. It was a miniseries.
I'm so
you
sorry.
watched it over multiple nights. That's a little bit different than just watching a one-off movie. This was something you had to engage in. You really understood slavery.
Yeah, he devoted multiple evenings when he could have been watching, I don't know, what's an equivalent show that was on in that time?
Archie
Miami
Bunker.
Vice?
Well, that's the thing. You didn't have much chance to watch anything else because there was only 3 channels. So
So it was
if ABC is
captive
carrying
audience,
Exactly.
audience, and so he's looking for credit on Roots.
And if
Where's Steve Ducey?
If we had a legitimate education about slavery and particularly Reconstruction, and particularly about like just the number of massacres that white people inflicted upon black people in Reconstruction alone, never mind this is sort of the broad massacre of slavery, he would cite other things. Like, you know, if you can't talk about the slavery that you learned in elementary school or in high school at that time, you're proving the point. If you've got to lean on Roots to say we didn't downplay how bad racism was, they did a mini series on it, as opposed to like being taught in.
What was that guy's reaction though? They just moved on to Cardinal Dolan. Like his eyes were like. That's even more offensive. Like, why is he explaining this to the one black man out of all Fox News that day?
I watched Roots. Cool.
I get racism. I know what your ancestors went through.
I
totally
did
get
the
it.
work. I did the work.
You're on Fox News now. You made it.
Unbelievable.
Real.
Let's go take some IMs here. Alan Gorlova. Al and a Gore lover. I don't know. Shouldn't we as leftists be skeptical of big government? China and Russia rely on it too, and no material improvement for the people there.
What? Have they watched your show before?
I think all you what you should know from that is that that the notion of big government is a silly concept. It doesn't mean anything. You can apply it to, to China and the United States. I mean, it's very different.
And I'd say like people on the left have written about, the perils of bureaucracy for 100+ years. So
Daddy Smithy, hey Sam, you hint at running for office, but do you think the leftist movement would be better served by being in the legislature or by being in the media spreading those ideas? I can see the merits of both arguments. Thanks to the entire MR crew for the work you do. Left is best. I don't know how to answer that question, but I will tell you I have no plans right now to run for governor of New York State at this time.
Maybe by 4 p.m. though, that'll be different.
We'll see.
There's a TikTok.
Is that today?
I'm just saying, like, any minute now it could happen. Do we have a pool going when it's going to happen?
I think he's not going to, I don't think it's going to happen until impeachment gets further along. I don't think he's going to resign because of the accusations. I think he's going to resign because it's going to look like he's going to get impeached.
Also the budget process. There's two things, like I think Hasty, the Assembly Speaker, who's carrying out, putting the procedures in order, like they have a budget to go through right now. Can you imagine Governor Cuomo just resigning abruptly, which they all want him to do when they're putting pressure on his leverage? But like the understory here, the subtext is they also have this budget they're in the middle of during a budget crisis.
So how long will it take for a special? I mean, I remember now, like when Spitzer resigned, you had Patterson.
Yeah.
And he was in for a while, but I can't remember how long. I had forgotten.
He just chose not to run again.
Okay, but
his approval ratings were so low.
Do you finish the term? So it's Kathy Hochul, right? Would be governor for like years.
2 more years.
Wow.
Well, I mean, that would
one more
still,
year. Excuse me.
But yeah, I think that's still. What's your take on that, Nomi? I mean, I think getting him out at all costs should be the primary objective.
I mean, like, again, I mean, I don't think it's just about him resigning. I think that there's a lot of subtext here in that you have a Senate and an Assembly who always going into the budget season, it's extraordinarily toxic. And now that the Senate is really Democratic and doesn't have the IDC holding up everything, you know, they're trying to push forward the wealth tax. And it seems like he's willing to barter that if they pull back on the pressure, but the impeachment proceedings are going to be happening simultaneously. And so they still might get the budget while the impeachment proceedings are going underway. So in the end, the legislature still wins and he still might get out. You know, not to mention there's an investigation happening with Albany police right now over potential criminal misconduct. There's 2 investigations in the Attorney General's office, one for the sexual assault harassment allegations and one for the nursing home cover-up. And then there's a federal probe over the nursing home cover-up right now. So he is like, you know, it's like one guy alone. And Biden, I think, is the only person who could potentially pressure him to get out if no new information comes out. And he's already said, let the investigations play out. So, you know, I think both sides actually do want this to play out, but the public pressure, getting his approval ratings down low, make it less likely, even if he does get through the investigation, that he runs again. And then the field opens up. But Kathy Hochul, I mean, I'm from Buffalo and she's from Buffalo and, you know, my parents were involved in politics there. We've known her for, I mean, she's fine. She's, but I can't imagine her or anyone, frankly, managing the budget process. I think it would really send the entire state into chaos, whether you want Cuomo or not, to suddenly have somebody who's never negotiated a budget with the legislature having to negotiate when the governor has the power of the purse strings. I think it's a complicated.
Although, I mean, it could be a benefit with a very progressive, much more progressive state legislature than in years past in order to not have that firewall.
It's not that much more progressive. Let's be real.
Well,
the Assembly is not that progressive. The Senate is like, has a handful of progressives, very important. But like the reality is that New York still has a lot of work to do in becoming, I mean, there are dozens of Assembly members who came out and said in support of Cuomo and then said like, listen, this is anti-Italian bias.
Well, I think that they just need to dump Cuomo or, you know, just for the National Democratic Party. It's just going to be a big story, I think, continuously.
Yeah. I mean, listen, obviously I'm no fan of Cuomo. No one ever would doubt that. But I do think it's like, be careful what you ask for in this moment, because it could, you know, I don't know if I actually don't have an opinion on this. I don't know if Kathy Hochul would be able to manage the budget prep. I mean, like, who does she bring in? Like, Melissa DeRosa to stay in there? I don't know. It would basically be Melissa DeRosa handling the budget.
She's too damaged at this point based on that. Whatever. I mean, this is kind of
The chief of
semantics points, but I think you'd hold Cuomo to account and then you worry about the other stuff later.
It's not later, though. It's right now. It's due in a week. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's not later. We're like in the middle.
He's not going anywhere.
In a week.
You know, he's not going anywhere this week. I mean, he's not going to leave. I mean, he's not going to leave by his own accord. He is going to end up giving the legislature what they want. And even if he doesn't get an explicit promise on the impeachment, because at the very least, he's looking like, well, if I do this, maybe I help my poll numbers. I'm not standing in the way. You know, I don't have people coming out criticizing me for vetoing it or killing it or whatnot.
Right.
And he's going to do whatever he takes at this point. I mean, he can't afford to be defiant right now. Let's put it that way.
He can't be Albany dad defiant.
Exactly. Groovy
So bad
lemon
for his
pie.
kids.
I'm going to be 45 years old tomorrow. Can I get a shofar? Yes, you can. Been there. Jay Wise, Tennessee. Thanks for going above and beyond with the show every day. It's been helping me get through my nights on the third shift for years. Shofar for my 30th birthday past Sunday. Wow, we got a lot of
Let's go.
whatever the astrological sign is for this time period.
Who was that, Sam? Did you say their name?
Jay Wise
Pisces.
in Tennessee.
Okay.
I think it's Pisces.
Josh from Tucson. Good morning, MR crew. Arizona did not change their clocks for daylight saving, as you can imagine. When the temperature hits highs well above 100, we do not need an extra hour of daylight in the evening. Also, in the 60s, drive-in theaters complained enough to get our state legislature to stop the practice here. We should ban this barbaric practice worldwide.
What barbaric practice? What?
Daylight
Oh, the day. Oh, in the drive-ins. I got it. There was snow in Tucson a couple of days ago. Those pictures were a little crazy.
Lee, New York City. Ooh, Emma's on the correct side. DST was extended during the oil crisis in 1973. Used to be shorter. Interesting. Tell Weigel the strike was against Stop and Shop. That's right, it was.
Oh, yeah.
Prairie Fire. Daylight savings was made to conserve energy during World War I. Farmers have to start their day when the sun comes out. It has nothing to deal with our artificial construct of time. Mailman Will. John Oliver has a video on DST, supposedly. It's a holdover from WW1 of all things. There you go. Moon in the Lake. Daylight savings sucks. People like me that have to get up early for work, that means the whole family going to bed early. Trying to get kids to go to bed with the damn sun still up is difficult. What is the problem with having the sun at its zenith at noon?
Well, I agree. I exercise in the morning, and I don't like it.
So it's
hard
the spring ahead that's a problem, not the fall back. In other words, the fall back is the natural state, according
So you
to
want more sunlight in the winter time. So that's why they do the. So the spring ahead is the false one, or the fall back is the false one? That's
spring
what I
ahead
don't
is
know.
the false one, it sounds like.
Got it.
Travis from
Oh, sorry. Go on, Sam.
I was going to say Travis from Pittsburgh, because they're saying, I'm with Sam. It being lighter later is way better because I can actually use the daylight after work and enjoy it. Indeed. I sit in this like little closet until 4 o'clock. And, you know, to get out in the winter and be like, oh, there's 20 minutes of sun and it's over. It's nighttime. That's it. I don't like that.
It's so depressing in New York when it's like dark and hazy at 4 o'clock. Ugh.
I just wanted to read this one IM because it was like referencing what I said earlier. So I was looking at them. So that Melissa Joan Hart, that's just says, Emma, I was in God's Not Dead 2 playing a teacher who wants to teach creationism. God's Not Dead stars Kevin Sorbo, who plays an atheist college philosophy professor who gets owned by his Christian student. Basically, that's like what the premises of those movies are. So there's
Wait,
God Not
she tweeted you?
No, that's not her. That's the.
Oh, it was an IM. Okay, I thought it was.
It's an IM, but like
tweeted
they're
it out.
pretending to be her. So yes, she's in God's Not Dead 2. She plays a teacher who I think actually says that no. She says that Dr. Martin Luther. She doesn't call him Dr. Martin Luther King. She calls him Reverend. And then the student goes to the principal, and she gets fired. And then the evil ACLU like doesn't defend her or something like that. That's what the premise is.
I just got to correct you. The vast majority of the cast of actually of the second in that series and movie is our listeners, and that's actually her. That's not a.
That's
not an
offensive.
IM
I'm
thing.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I thought it was Twitter Sam, not IM. I thought she like tweeted it out and tagged her, and then Melissa Joan Hart jumped in.
Those are just like hilarious movies for the Majority Report audience if you want to partake in an herbal, smokable supplement and then watch them. They're pretty funny.
Kevin Sorbo went to my alma mater, Minnesota State University, and if he ever wants to debate me there, game on.
That would be a huge alumni, maybe homecoming. You should do that.
I think so. I mean, MSUM athletics. Get back to me.
Big time lobby. Wow, Matt professing to being a regressive leftist. Charlie Kirk. It's actually court precedent that people always have an incentive to lower their taxes at both state and federal level. Not sure I follow that. Laughable laugher. You rang? Shelby from Phoenix. I'm in Arizona, so our time never changes, but all my shows start an hour earlier now. You started your show at 10 a.m. here last week, but now it's 9 a.m. Steve from Kansas City. The Kansas Supreme Court actually had to force Brownback's minions in the legislature to pay for schools. Appianava. Daylight savings causes car accidents every year. So I don't know, which part is daylight savings? Is that like when we jump ahead causes car accidents?
Brendan just sent us a chart.
A helpful graphic.
Oh, let's see it. Pop it up there. Time zone abbreviations are short, but differ by one letter, so it's no wonder they're causing a lot of confusion. What's the difference between EDT and EST? EDT stands for Eastern Daylight Time, and it's the time that is used in some parts of North America during the spring and summer. EST is the abbreviation of Eastern Standard Time, and North Americans live in accordance with it in the fall and the winter.
So we're in EDT now. Is that right?
I thought we were in EST.
No.
What?
Which one is it, Brendan?
EDT now.
More daylight.
It's also not officially spring yet. So it doesn't, there's that period like right now where we're not officially in spring. Can you show it again?
Well, pop it back up, guys. I think it said we're on
breaking our
spring. This was
brains.
not a happy, this is not a helpful graphic. EST is the abbreviation of Eastern Standard Time, and North Americans live in accordance with it in the fall. Oh, in the fall and the winter. Oh, I see.
Okay. Still winter.
Spring forward, fall back. Fall back.
Where does Puxatawny-
I've never heard of EDT in my entire life.
Really?
Yeah,
I hear people
I've
do
heard
it all
of
the time.
EST, but not ED.
When I tell people, I just go ET because I don't want to get mixed up in any of that other nonsense. Sad man. Hey, Sam, this was actually a question from yesterday regarding the AstraZeneca vaccine. I heard that Americans didn't want it because it caused blood clots, so they sent it to other countries. That is not true. In fact, we are hoarding millions of doses of the AstraZeneca, and people have requested that we give it away because we have yet to even approve it here in the United States.
People are very concerned about this blood clot thing. I've heard it from multiple people now, and it's just like kind of like a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants up.
There have been 8, I think, countries now that have suspended it because of blood clot fears. However, the experts from the World Health Organization and others claim that it is safe. They need more data. That, what happens is that when you give vaccinations to millions and millions of people, inevitably, people are going to contract problems that they would have contracted otherwise. But it's going to appear that it correlates in some way with the vaccine. Certainly, people are getting some reactions to the vaccines. People get headaches. People, I would imagine there are some actual legitimate reactions to the vaccine, but they're just so not widespread. And I think they're going to find, I don't know what they'll find with the AstraZeneca thing. They have paused it, though, in many Eastern European, EU countries, not Eastern European. Let's see. I am from Norway, and 3 young vaccinated health workers got clots, and now one of them is dead. First death was reported in Denmark. It's put on hold now, but 120,000 Norwegian got the Zeneca vaccine. Can you confirm that the U.S. knew about the danger before they gave it to other countries? Like I say, my understanding is that we have not, that people were asking us to release it to the EU. And I would say that I have no idea I don't imagine that U.S. would have any data before anybody else because they haven't been administering it. We have 3 vaccines that have been approved for emergency use in this country. It's Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and the Pfizer, and that's it. So, majority wardrobe coordinator. I can't believe people believe Sam is bought off by COVID. Everyone who really listens to this show knows Sam gets his money from the bidet industry. He's in the pocket of Big Tushy. If Cuomo gets arrested, Cynthia Nixon should read him his Miranda rights. I'll be here all week. Try the veal. That's pretty good.
And Sam has to be involved as the steak eater at some point, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like revive that role.
Sam, you wombat wanking lust bucket. Do you ever think of getting someone like Nick DiPaolo on the show? He's funny, but his politics are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I think if you debated him, he might convert some right-wing comedy fans out there. I would actually do that. I hired DiPaolo on a TV show 22 years ago. Show called Beat Cops. And
what was it called?
Beat Cops. John Benjamin and I played cops. And
sounds like Peacock.
It was not Peacocks. It was Beat Cops. And DiPaolo, I remember a conversation with Nick that I have never forgotten, where he said to me, and I didn't know him that well. I mean, I sort of like peripherally knew of him, but I knew that he was like he was a character. And I needed like a tough guy, a tough guy to intimidate Benjamin and I. And I'm talking to him and I'm like, so you living in New York or LA? Yeah, no, I moved back from LA. White guy can't get a job out there. And I was like, what? Are you serious? Yeah, no. He can't get a job if you're white male.
Who said this?
DiPaolo said that to me.
What?
And I just remember going like, what? Like, I did like 4 sitcom pilots with guys who were exactly like a Nick DiPaolo type. It was nuts.
She just said like, well, you actually just suck. Like, there were 5 spots. You were number 12.
Yeah,
you suck. See, that's what men need to do. Men need to call out other white men and be like, no, this isn't about you not having a spot. You just are untalented and an asshole and nobody likes you. And so maybe you should find another field.
I mean,
honestly, we can't do it.
I feel like the conceit of doing conservative comedy is that you've admitted that to everyone at that point.
Yeah. Tushy Lover. Thanks to Tiny Tushy, which I heard about on MR. My butt takes a shower after every workout. All right.
It's called Hello Tushy.
The Democrats did capitalize. They elected Laura Kelly, Democrat, as governor. Barrett Home 2. I think daylight saving time was capitalized on energy efficiency. What is Dave's new look? It's kind of looks a bit German. I don't know what that is. Germaclean. Sam, can we use Hello Tushy discount in the UK? I'm already sold after spending some time working in Japan with their awesome toilets. I don't know about that, to be honest with you. Go check with them. Silverball Stud, current Kansas Governor Democrat Laura Kelly, as I'm sure you know, served in the Kansas City legislature as a Republican before the Trump era. Former colleagues there give her zero leeway, so that she certainly speaks to any chance of unity. I'm quite worried that her bold and practical decision to fully close schools, et cetera, early and strictly will cost her re-election. Brownback's tenure forgotten, as you said. Democrats did a very poor job of capitalizing on that. Mango Baklava. Sam, or Balaclava. Sam, I want to thank you. I decided to try dressing more like you, a severely elderly man, and it's made me a MILF magnet. I'm not into women, but it boosts my ego when they tell me they got gay panic. That's pretty good. Attorney Andrew, I want Emma's thoughts on last night Knicks Nets game.
It was a heartbreaker. I mean, I thought the officiating was pretty bad. And Julius Randle played with a lot of intensity and fight. It's hard when the Knicks, are down 2 point guards and Alfred Payton and Derrick Rose. And Frank Ntilikina's in like the coldest streak of his short career. And that's saying something. I'm a huge Frank fan, but that it was a bummer. So it was a bummer of a game last night. I mean, but the Knicks held their own with Harden, with Kyrie. I mean, with the Nets are actually, contenders for the NBA finals. The Knicks might make the playoffs, but that's about it.
I think we need because I was just going to ask you another sports question, but I think what we need is we need to have like a sound drop. Like we need to make this a package. Like every day we have one sports question for Emma. So I'll save this one for tomorrow.
Were you going to ask me about the Pats free agency? Because they killed it.
Yes, I was.
If someone can make like a ESPN
exactly the question I was going to ask you. That's nuts. All right, let's just save it for tomorrow because I want to hear. I read an interesting take in the Globe about it. And I want to hear your opinion. Shore app, British Trump. Someone should go out there and make that package, that audio package.
Shore Rap, British Trump, a.k.a. Boris
Free health.
Johnson, is trying to pass a law making noisy protests illegal and punishable up to 10 years. It would also outlaw protesting outside of Parliament and defacing public monuments. Looks like British conservatives are playing the hold my beer games with America. All right, we're going to do 5 more IMs. Oh, my gosh. And then we're going to get here. Craven James, MR Crew, nothing changes with daylight savings time. With daylight savings time. Me stares in Arizona. Tom
Same with
Hoffman.
Hawaii.
I mean, Crystal Ball's campaign kind of got canceled for a party in college, didn't it? And it was a pretty messed up thing to happen to a woman in public. I think that's true, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Antifa secretary, please turn on the phone so I can listen while I grab lunch in my office. Apologies. Sorry. Uncle Drew from Chicago. Power concedes power. The grip of control espoused by white men. If their representation in film diminishes, it's optics. Power changes. See slavery to Jim Crow to war on drugs. Not 100% sure I know what that means. Left of the box. Do you read all the IMs? You don't read out live after the show? You guys rock. Sometimes I do. Depends on what I got to do. And here is let's do 2 more. Garden Socialist. Daylight savings isn't for farmers. Crops don't care what time it is. And the final IM of the day. Bullprog. I propose fallback and springback. Fair enough. Nomi, great job, folks. Check out her show in just 30 minutes, 28 minutes at YouTube.com.
30 minutes, yes.
YouTube.com, The Nomiki Show.
Perfect.
Emma, Matt, Brendan, great job today. See you folks tomorrow.
See ya.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar.